Chapter 387. Tianyun's complexion changed. It was Qin Yu who saved us. Tuzan mocked. Otherwise, do you think we suddenly had a kind heart? I really want to know what kind of expression Qin Yu will have if he hears what you're saying. Their faces flushed red and their embarrassment nearly condensed into essence. The several people who had been talking loudly just now wanted to dig a hole and crawl into it. How shameful. They had been cursing and cursing Qin Yu just now, but who knew that the only reason they survived was because of Qin Yu? Xiong Yuena revealed an expression as if she already knew. How could someone who had transformed into a devil and then recovered to their original state die so easily? But she immediately felt a headache. If Qin Yu didn't die, what would she do if he killed her to silence her? But if he really wanted to kill her, all he needed to do was stop the Titans from saving her. Just what was this person thinking? Xiong Yuena's mind was in chaos. Tianyun's complexion paled. He angrily glared at his companions, incomparably disappointed. At the same time, he felt a deep sense of guilt. He faintly guessed that the reason Qin Yu hadn't said a single word was because he wanted to save energy. It was clear he didn't have any confidence he could cross the Black Lake on his own. Perhaps he already wanted to move. Only after he passed the Black Lake's test would he have a chance to save them. But before this, he had actually been secretly dissatisfied with Qin Yu's actions. Thinking of this, Tianyun's guilt deepened. He looked towards the island at the center of the lake and faintly saw a figure looking in his direction. Qin Yu, I'm sorry. You must come back in one piece. I owe you an apology. Tianyun clenched his fists within his robes. On the island at the center of the lake, Qin Yu smiled as he saw Tianyun and the others being rescued from the Black Lake. He had finally repaid a favor. He never imagined the reactions of Tianyun's companions. Of course, even if he knew, he wouldn't care. This was because the one he wanted to save was Tianyun alone. The others were just incidental. He didn't care if he didn't know them. He turned and walked deeper into the island. Qin Yu's expression was calm. After avoiding all the Titans, his hand flashed and he took out the invisible half-disc. At this time, it emitted a burning heat. Even with Qin Yu's powerful demon body, he still felt a bit of pain. A strong feeling surged into his mind. The thing it sensed was on this island. Qin Yu maintained his composure. He used his divine sense to probe his surroundings. After he didn't sense anything wrong, he followed the directions and headed deeper into the island. The island at the center of the lake wasn't too large. Soon, Qin Yu arrived at the core of the island. But, what left him frowning was that there were actually several Titans resting here. Tuba's figure was within. As Qin Yu arrived, these Titans swept their eyes over him. Some revealed playful looks, some mocking looks, some filled with fighting spirit. Qin Yu's heart chilled. He could feel a tremendous pressure from the eyes of these Titans. Each Titan was no weaker than Tuba. Without using the power of the burning heavens, dealing with one of them was probably his limit. Humph! Tuba coldly snorted, his eyes sweeping around. The Titan warriors looked away, but there wasn't much awe on their faces. They didn't want to provoke Tuba, but they also didn't fear him. Without expression, Qin Yu walked straight towards a large stone and sat down cross-legged. Even Tuba couldn't help but frown at this action. A Titan warrior shouted, "Human outsider, this isn't a place you can come to. Leave immediately." Qin Yu's complexion darkened. I passed the totem test, so why can't I come here? I don't dare to go against the will of the totem, but if you dare to offend it, then I, Tutu, will punish you. Tuba said in a low voice, "You should leave." Qin Yu shook his head. I have the qualifications to be here. Tutu sneered. Tuba, it's not that I don't want to give you face, but this human outsider doesn't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. He suddenly stood up and took several steps forwards. The earth rumbled and trembled as he hurtled forwards like a bolt of lightning, his fist punching out. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He never thought that Tutu would dare to attack him. He hurriedly raised a hand to block. With a loud explosion, he stuffily coughed. The stone beneath him shattered and he was forced backwards. Tutu coldly said, "Leave this place." Qin Yu clenched his teeth. Without a single word, he turned and left. The Titan warriors behind him roared with laughter. Soon, Qin Yu was far away from this area. The anger and gloominess on his face instantly vanished. He lifted his hands, excitement in his eyes. In his left hand was the half-disc he had obtained in the mountain valley. In his right hand, there was also a half-disc. Just now, Qin Yu had sensed that the source was in that stone. He had no choice but to lure Tutu into attacking, but he never thought that there would be a second half-disc hidden in that stone. As he pretended to be shaken backwards, he followed the guiding strength and grasped the disc in his hand. Two half-discs, this was a bit of a tongue-twister, but Qin Yu couldn't care less. He subconsciously licked his lips, a bit of hesitation in his eyes. He didn't know what would happen if he connected them together. If there was too much movement, then that would be bad. Whatever, he would endure it. Once he left the Titan tribe, he would connect them. But at this time, Qin Yu's complexion changed. The two discs in his hands forcefully pulled his hands together, causing them to collide. There was a light cracking sound in his ears. Qin Yu's back was instantly covered in a cold sweat. His body stiffened like iron, and it was only after several seconds that he began to gasp for breath. Luckily, when the two discs merged together, there wasn't any movement at all, otherwise. Qin Yu rejoiced inwardly. He quickly traced the discs. After they merged together, there wasn't the slightest crack in the middle, as if they had truly fused together. But that was it. He still couldn't see it, couldn't sense it, and there was no response when he poured his magic power into it. Besides two becoming one, there was no change at all. Qin Yu flipped his hand and put away the disc. He determined that this object had a great origin. It didn't matter if he couldn't find a way to activate it, he would have plenty of time in the future. He casually found a place and sat down. He carefully sensed the cool energy coiling around his body. It was slowly increasing the intensity of his mortal body. He estimated that at this rate of consumption, he could maintain it for at least half a year. During this period of time, Qin Yu's mortal body would continue to strengthen. Perhaps he would be able to reach the small success boundary of the King Step demon body. The General Step and Commander Step demon bodies didn't have different grades. But, after stepping into the King Step, the demon body would truly enter a profound boundary and there would be all sorts of mysteries. For instance, the King Step demon body had a chance of awakening a demon body combat skill at the small success, large success, and perfection levels. This sort of combat skill, when combined with the demon body, could erupt with an extremely fierce attack. In its natural state, the demon body would constantly grow stronger over time. In around 30 years, one could reach small success. The energy provided by this island shortened this process by dozens of times. Unfortunately, he didn't know where this cool energy came from. If he could obtain a bit more of it, he might even be able to grow his demon body to large success or even perfection in a short period of time. Qin Yu cautiously probed out with his divine sense. Although native life forms didn't cultivate the soul, after experiencing the heaven-shaking blood energy fluctuations of the tribe, he didn't dare to be careless. Who knew whether or not these titans, whose mortal bodies had reached an inconceivably terrifying boundary, would develop some sort of divine sense detection ability. The island at the center of the lake wasn't too large. With Qin Yu's current soul cultivation, he could easily cover it with his divine sense. He searched bit by bit but found nothing in the end. However, with the disc in his storage ring, Chinyu didn't dare to completely believe that his divine sense was completely blank. Since he couldn't find anything, Chinyu retracted his divine sense. He no longer wasted any energy and closed his eyes to meditate. Although he didn't know what he would face next, it wasn't wrong to maintain his peak condition. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, several hours passed. Chinyu opened his eyes and looked at the bright skies. Although he was already used to this, he still couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. This should have been a time of thick darkness, but it was still daytime in the infinite realm. Or, it could be said that within the infinite realm, there was no concept of night at all. At the very least, since Chinyu entered, he hadn't seen nightfall. His thoughts stirred and he suddenly thought of the little blue lamp's characteristics. If the world was always bright, could it still emit that ghostly blue light? As soon as this thought appeared, Chinyu's heart inexplicably throbbed. He couldn't help but feel an impulse. After a moment of hesitation, Chinyu left behind a trace of his divine sense. With a thought, his consciousness blurred and he seemed to cross through endless space. When he opened his eyes once more, he had condensed a figure with the help of his blood and appeared in the distant nothingness, in the massive space connected by the sealed dimension ring. After entering the infinite realm, dangers could arrive at any time. This was the first time Chinyu's consciousness had arrived. He soon discovered that the entire space was different. Although the earth was still broken, it was much better than before. The speed of repair far surpassed his expectations. Even at the distant edges of space, the cracks that had collapsed had completely vanished. Chinyu's divine sense body revealed a look of shock. He looked up at the great sun that emitted endless light and heat. His eyes pierced through all illusions and fell onto the core of the little blue lamp. At this time, the little blue lamp had turned a ghostly blue color for 2 feet around it. This light seemed the same as before, but Chinyu could feel that it was vastly different. Moreover, the light of the little blue lamp could actually extend out 2 feet. This in itself was inconceivable. His thoughts raced. Chinyu lifted a hand and grasped the air. The only living being in the sealed realm, that green grass, appeared in his hand. The grass swayed in excitement. It wrapped around Chinyu's arm, sending out a message of joy and submission. This green grass was more than twice as large as before. Moreover, the veins in the center of the grass had turned a faint silver color. This silver color was extremely thin, but Chinyu could feel an extremely terrifying aura coming from it. After a long time, Chinyu's thoughts stirred and his divine sense body vanished from sight. On the island at the center of the lake, he opened his eyes, a thoughtful look on his face. Although he didn't know why the little blue lamp had suddenly become so formidable, there was one thing he was sure of. This was related to the infinite realm. Chinyu looked up at the bright skies, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. Up until now, the little blue lamp had given Chinyu the greatest help. But, it had always been mysterious and unfathomable. Besides the will of the world wanting to erase it, there was nothing else he knew. But today, Chinyu felt as if he had truly touched upon a secret that belonged to the little blue lamp. As for what this secret was, he would need to slowly unravel it. At this time, a strange fluctuation suddenly arrived at the island at the center of the lake. A bubble appeared and wrapped around Chinyu. His complexion changed but he didn't resist. He allowed the bubble to wrap around him and fly him into the air. Sure enough, from other parts of the island, bubbles rose up one after another, each bubble wrapping around a titan. The bubbles rose higher and higher, faster and faster. The island at the center of the lake, and even the entire canyon of the Titan tribe, all of it became incomparably small before finally vanishing from sight. The bubbles tore through the clouds and fog, rising upwards and upwards, as if they wanted to break through the barriers of space and reach another world. Hashtag 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 hashtag. Chapter 388. Qin Yu's eyes shook. The bubble rapidly shuttled through the clouds, its speed so fast that it was hard to see what was happening outside. Even so, it continued to accelerate without any signs of stopping. Looking from afar, the 17 bubbles in the sky were moving forward at an astonishing speed, tearing and piercing through the clouds and mist, leaving behind long white traces. It was like 13 paths leading to heaven, reaching the end of the world. After an unknown period of time, the fog that filled his vision suddenly vanished. An incomparably horrifying gale appeared outside the bubble. This was the astral wind of the highest heavens. It had the power to destroy flesh and blood and extinguish the soul. Not even blue sea cultivators dared to easily touch it. Qin Yu's heart raced several times. If this bubble burst open at this moment and he fell into the astral winds of the 9 heavens, then no matter how powerful his mortal body was, he would still turn to ash. Fortunately, it was unknown how this bubble was condensed. Although it looked thin and weak, it actually possessed unimaginable power. It shuttled through the astral winds of the 9 heavens without trembling in the slightest. In fact, after it entered the 9 heavens astral wind, its speed of ascending suddenly increased by a large margin. The friction between the bubble and the astral wind produced a terrifyingly high temperature. The surface of the bubble actually ignited with raging flames. The 17 giant fireballs continued to ascend with indescribable power. The corners of Qin Yu's lips twitched. He was well aware that if he were to come into contact with even a trace of it, he would be burnt to ashes by the flames outside the bubble. However, such a terrifying flame still couldn't shake the bubble in the slightest. This shocked him, and at the same time, he finally realized something. The mysterious totem in the giant tribe was much stronger than he had imagined. Its power had reached an unimaginable realm. He suddenly thought of something. The infinite realm had already collapsed and not even the blue sea realm could withstand the power of rules. Could this totem with transcendent methods have perished in the endless river of time? As soon as this thought appeared, Qin Yu's expression darkened. He faintly guessed that in the current land of divinity and demons, even the most powerful calamity immortal realm cultivators couldn't compare with totems. Just what sort of calamity could cause such a supreme existence to perish? On the road of cultivation, once one reached the divine soul realm and had many hidden cards in their hands, they would be considered a powerhouse of their own domain and would have the strength to protect themselves. But now, it seemed that this path was even longer and longer than what he knew. Perhaps what he saw now was only the tip of the iceberg that was revealed amidst the lingering clouds and mist. Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his tumbling thoughts. With his current boundary, it was far too early to consider these things. As long as he lived and walked forward step by step, there would come a day when he would arrive. The blazing flames outside the bubble illuminated Qin Yu's face. His expression was firm and tranquil, his eyes surging with confidence. At this moment, the bubble trembled violently, as if it had hit some sort of shackle. Its speed rapidly decreased, and the burning flames on the outside quickly extinguished. Qin Yu fiercely looked up. He saw 17 air bubbles gathering together and crazily rushing outwards, like a bowstring being pulled tighter and tighter. Suddenly, a heaven-shaking explosion exploded in Qin Yu's mind. It was fierce and terrifying, as if the heavens and earth were being split apart. His ears buzzed and his face paled. The next moment, all the bubbles seemed to have broken free from all restraints and floated in the boundless nothingness. Everywhere one looked, one could only see boundless darkness. The void in the outer world, this thought subconsciously appeared in Qin Yu's mind. Then, the bubble he was in suddenly sank. Whoosh, whoosh, in an instant, all the bubbles passed through the confinement. It seemed to refuse the things inside from leaving, but it didn't stop the outside from entering. The bubbles sank faster and faster until they entered the astral winds once more. Blazing flames burned around them, and when the flames vanished, all that was left was the familiar clouds and fog. Qin Yu's eyes widened. Could it be that the powerful totem that the Titans believed in, after setting up the test of the sacred lake, was only sending them up into the heavens to gain some experience? He turned to look at the other bubbles. As they fell into the world, the bubbles separated once more. It was impossible to see the expressions of the other Titans. Qin Yu could only suppress his thoughts and helplessly wait. Finally, the earth reappeared in his line of sight. This was a boundless lake, or perhaps it would be more accurate to call it a sea. But Qin Yu inexplicably knew that this was really just a lake, just a bit larger. Qin Yu's eyes widened and he couldn't help but reveal another look of shock. The bubble flew straight through the world and then fell straight back down. But the place where it finally landed was no longer the canyon where the Titan tribe was. This sort of mystery was far from what the current Qin Yu could understand. And in this inconceivably large lake, there was also an island. On this island, lush forests and palaces could be faintly seen, their edges propping up the heavens. The atmosphere was extraordinary. At this time, Qin Yu's complexion changed. The invisible disk in his storage ring appeared in the outside world without warning. In the next moment, it appeared in his line of sight for the first time. Its surface was covered with countless exquisite runes that emitted a faint light. Shwa, the disk and Qin Yu vanished from sight at the same time. Deep within the infinite realm, on the island in the middle of the lake, two cultivators from both sides had their complexions change, joy in their eyes. It had opened. The two people glanced at each other and shouted out together, "Activate the array." Bang, bang, the cultivators on both sides each activated their own secret arts. A black and a white beam of light shot up into the skies, crashing into the void above the island. Then, a black and white vortex condensed in the skies. Within the vortex, the black and white lights were like fish, howling in the air. Let's go. Step into the mystic realm and obtain good fortune. Over 100 cultivators on both sides howled into the black and white vortex. In the skies above the incomparably massive lake, 17 bubbles slowly fell down. When they were dozens of feet from the ground, they quietly burst apart. The sturdy bodies of the Titan warriors heavily fell onto the ground. With a loud rumble, the earth shook and the surrounding ancient trees rustled. Tuba took a deep breath. Ever since he was born, the annihilation aura that had shrouded him had completely disappeared. A feeling of freedom swelled up in his heart and he couldn't help but grin, revealing a brilliant smile. He swept his eyes around and his complexion changed. The 16 Titans were all here, but Qin Yu, who had come with them, was nowhere to be found. But at this time, before Tuba could speak, above their heads, a black and white light suddenly appeared. With a loud rumble, it expanded, turning into a vortex. Whoosh, whoosh, figures flew out from the vortex. In the blink of an eye, over 100 people appeared. As they swept their eyes over the island below them, excitement filled their eyes. Tuba angrily roared, "Human outsiders!" The eyes of the 16 Titan warriors instantly turned red. Terrifying blood energy fluctuations erupted from their bodies. This was a transcendent lucky chance bestowed upon the Titan race by the totem. Everything here could only be obtained by the Titan warriors. "We'll be leaving first. I'll leave these big fellows to you all." The handsome youth nodded. He crushed a jade talisman in his hand and a white light wrapped around everyone around him. Then, with a slight distortion, they vanished from sight. On the other side, the black-robed cultivator coldly humphed. "Let's go too." Without any movement from him, a black hexagram appeared on the ground. With a flicker, everyone was teleported away. Damned human outsiders. How did they get in here? Qin Yu, that human outsider called Chinyu has disappeared. It's him, it must be him. I will definitely kill him. The Titan warriors angrily roared. But they couldn't find the human outsider that had teleported away. They could only grit their teeth and walk deeper into the island. In a state where Chinyu didn't know what was happening, he had already shouldered a great blame. But even if he knew, he couldn't care less about it. When the air bubble arrived in the skies above the island, the disk suddenly appeared, teleporting him away. The moment he vanished, Chinyu felt a surge of excitement in his heart. This was because all of this seemed to be saying that he had walked into a great stroke of luck and that he was about to obtain a great harvest. But reality gave him a rude awakening. After arriving in this incomparably massive arena that resembled a coliseum, a terrifying divine sense impact directly descended upon him. His mortal body wasn't injured, but his soul felt as if it had been tossed into a storm. Chinyu could only bitterly persist. Any mistake would mean death. And what was most terrifying was that this divine sense impact seemed endless. Chinyu had already persisted for nearly 2 hours and it still hadn't stopped. He was secretly anxious. If this continued and he couldn't resist it, his soul would be instantly torn to shreds. He tried to move his body, but the air was as heavy as a mountain, he couldn't move it at all. Chinyu bitterly smiled. Could it be that he had obtained the strange disc through a lucky chance, but in the end, he was going to die because of it? Another hour passed. Chinyu's complexion was deathly pale and blood began to seep out from his nose and mouth. Layers of shadows appeared in front of him and his vision darkened. He was about to reach his limit. Within his soul space, Spirity's face was filled with anxiety and anger. But, as she was still in the position of raising her hand, unable to move at all. A boundless aura was suppressing her. The shadow beneath Chinyu began to wriggle like water. The face of the summoning god appeared. As it looked at Chinyu, its eyes flashed. It was unknown what it was thinking. Hold on. I can do this. I cannot fall. Chinyu bit his lips, his body shivering. But at this time, the terrifying divine sense impact suddenly vanished. His feet buckled and he fell to the ground, gasping for breath. Shwa, a figure appeared in front of him. It was translucent, it was clearly only an image. Only by resisting the divine sense impact will you have the qualifications to open the true test. You have 2 hours to rest. This is your reward. The phantom flicked its sleeves and a purple light fell into Chinyu's body. As the purple light entered his body, it appeared in Chinyu's soul space and turned into a purple rain. Spirity's eyes widened, a look of shock on her face. As she looked at Chinyu's soul, there was even a bit of envy in her eyes. Unfortunately, this purple rain was bestowed upon Chinyu. Even though she was his partner's soul, she had no way of obtaining it. All of the raindrops seemed to have a mind of their own. They fell onto Chinyu's soul, and every time a drop was absorbed, his soul would gently tremble. A crescent purple moon shadow appeared above Chinyu's soul. As the purple rain was absorbed, it became increasingly solid. But, when the purple rain disappeared, this crescent purple moon shadow was still a bit short of condensing. After losing its strength to supplement itself, it began to rapidly shake, as if it would collapse at any moment. Spirity took a deep breath. She stepped in front of Chinyu's soul and lifted a hand. Kacha, the surface of the soul bead that the good fortune tablet helped condense was instantly covered with cracks. In the next moment, it exploded, turning into a massive amount of pure soul force. Then, all of this soul force was like a river returning to the sea, instantly absorbed by the purple moon shadow. After obtaining this soul force, it finally stepped into the critical stage of its transformation. It turned from illusory to real, sprinkling down a pale purple light. Spirity's body swayed and her complexion paled. But as she looked at the moon's shadow, she revealed a brilliant smile. Chapter 389. Schwa, Qin Yu's soul opened its eyes and looked at Spirity. After a moment of silence, it earnestly said, "Thank you." Spirity smiled. "As a partner soul, my fate is one with yours. Helping you is the same as helping me." She paused for a moment and continued to say, "When you are strong enough, I will tell you everything. The most important thing right now is to find a way to pass this test. Believe me, this is the greatest good fortune you will ever encounter. You must do your best to obtain it." She turned and stepped away, vanishing from sight. Qin Yu's soul revealed a dignified expression. He looked up at the purple moon in the skies. Bathed in its purple light, the damage to his soul was being restored at an astonishing speed. And this was only the reward for passing the test's threshold. Once he truly passed the test, what he obtained would surely be astonishing. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours passed. The phantom punctually said, "Time's up." This was a black-haired old man. His back was straight and his face was cold and there was no emotion in his eyes. With a flick of his sleeves, a black cage appeared out of thin air and covered Qin Yu. In a moment, underworld guards will appear in the cage. Kill them with all your strength. The more you kill, the more likely you are to pass the test and the more generous your rewards will be. If you cannot withstand it, shout out that you admit defeat and you will be transmitted out. The black-haired old man vanished. He coldly said, "Begin." Schwa, within the cage, black fog suddenly gushed out and a figure walked out. Its facial features were blurry and one could only see a pair of crimson eyes. Its 30-foot-tall body crazily released a cruel and destructive aura. This was an underworld guard. With a loud roar, it lifted a hand and grasped out. A saber appeared in its hand. The saber burned with black flames, icy cold and without heat. The saber slashed down. Qin Yu lifted a hand and punched out. A wild strength erupted, instantly shattering the saber and crushing it. The underworld guard instantly collapsed, turning into black fog that dissipated. It was actually so weak. Qin Yu was startled. But at this time, another underworld guard appeared from the black fog. It also condensed a saber and chopped down. Qin Yu didn't dare to be careless. But after punching out, the underworld guard was instantly killed. This was the test. It was too simple. Outside a giant temple, thousands of feet high, it seemed to be the residence of a heavenly deity. Although it was empty, it still emitted a heaven-shaking aura. At the entrance of the hall, there were 2 black sculptures. One was an ape holding a stick, and the other was an eagle with its wings spread. Not far away, dozens of cultivators stood together. The leader of the group looked at the 2 statues with a solemn expression. He turned and chatted with several people around him. After finishing his preparations, he smiled at a female cultivator not too far away and said, "Junior apprentice Sister Ningling, don't get too close. After all, your strength still has a more critical use." In the crowd, many female cultivators revealed looks of envy. Although their senior brother was gentle, he had never been so concerned about them. Although he was jealous, he didn't dare to reveal any of it. This was because this junior apprentice Sister Ningling had the most noble divine Tao bloodline flowing within her. It was rumored that once she fully awakened, she would have the chance to inherit 9 Heaven Mirror Moon Palace. At that time, she would be a peak character within the immortal sect. As the crowd approached, the 2 statues quickly came to life. The black stones on their surfaces fell off, revealing their true forms. Rumble, the terrifying aura was like a surging tide, erupting without restraint. Outside the black rockery, another group of human cultivators stared at the base of the mountain, at the blooming purple flower, their eyes blazing hot. This is truly worthy of being a legendary space fragment that comes from beyond the world. There is actually such a wondrous treasure like the demon origin flower. The young cultivator in the lead had an overbearing aura. He coldly said, "Kill." Bang! Billowing demonic energy shot into the skies. The space around the demon origin flower twisted and two phantom life forms appeared. With a loud roar, they hurtled towards the crowd. Chin-yu punched the saber-wielding underworld guard. Then, he stepped forwards and punched the underworld guard's chest. The underworld guard's body instantly disintegrated, turning into black energy that vanished from sight. But at this time, Chin-yu didn't have the least bit of joy on his face. Instead, he bitterly smiled. He finally realized just how freakish this test was. The underworld guards were endless. They were indeed weak at the start, but as Chin-yu killed more and more of them, the strength of the underworld guards increased. Now, Chin-yu needed at least 2 punches or even 3 punches to kill one. But as long as one died, the underworld guard would immediately reform. There was no time to catch his breath. Shwa, from the black fog, another underworld guard walked out. Chin-yu's pupils shrank. This was because this underworld guard was wearing a suit of armor. He lifted a hand and condensed a saber. Black flames ignited around it as it fiercely cut down. Chin-yu's heart skipped a beat. He could feel a threat from this saber. He lifted his hand and a sword appeared. It erupted with blinding sword light, incomparably sharp. 5-element sword, metal. The saber and sword collided. The saber broke in half and the sword light cut through the underworld guard's neck. A head shot into the skies. Whoosh, the underworld guard's body collapsed. In the blink of an eye, another one walked out. Outside the giant temple, the stick-wielding ape and Rock's corpses lay on the ground. Their bodies were covered with wounds but not a single drop of blood flowed out. In fact, there was even a strange dark silver color to their flesh. This sort of puppet technique is truly inconceivable. Even in my immortal sect, we are far from being able to compare. The senior apprentice brother had a look of praise on his face. He ordered the 2 puppets to be placed into his storage ring. He lifted a hand and the phantom of an oil lamp condensed in the air, flying into the temple. After several breaths of time, the senior apprentice brother faintly smiled. "There's no danger. Let's go in." Beneath the rockery, the last phantom life form had its chest pierced through by a fist. Its sharp claws stiffened and it immediately dissipated into gray energy. Humph! The overbearing young cultivator drew back his fist. He lifted a hand and the demon origin flower flew into his hand. After looking at it for several moments, he revealed a satisfied expression and then placed it into his storage ring. "Let's continue forward." A group of cultivators walked past the rockery. A stone wall appeared in front of them. 5-colored sword light swirled, turning into a vortex that covered the underworld puppet. With a cruel roar, the 5-colored sword light vanished from sight. The underworld guard had been killed. Chin-yu's complexion paled and he bitterly smiled. Ever since he put on the armor, the strength of the underworld guard had rapidly increased. It was only now that he erupted with the 5-element swords that he was able to smoothly kill it. Roar, from the black energy, a new underworld guard walked out. Its crimson eyes shined with a faint silver light. As this silver light locked onto him, Chin-yu's heart shrank. Without hesitation, he stepped forwards. The 5-element swords erupted, turning into a vortex that fell down. But this time, the underworld guard was actually able to resist the murderous attack of the 5-element swords. It roared out again and again, the saber in its hand constantly chopping down. Chin-yu's complexion soon changed. This was because he discovered that as the saber chopped down more and more times, it erupted with an even more terrifying strength. It was as if each saber could superimpose its strength. According to this rate of increase, the Underworld Guard would soon be able to tear apart the 5-element swords. Not daring to delay any longer, Qin Yu roared out loud. The strength of his demon body surged out and his combat strength instantly rose. Puff, puff, the Underworld Guard's body disintegrated, turning into fog and vanishing. But in the blink of an eye, a new Underworld Guard walked out. The silver light in its eyes became even brighter. The 5-element sword's vortex arrived. As the Underworld Guard walked out of the black fog, it was killed where it stood. Then there was a third, a fourth, a fifth, all the way until the 9th Underworld Guard appeared. Qin Yu's all-out 5-element swords was blocked by the saber in its hand. Then, it slashed out a second saber, a third saber, a fourth saber. Qin Yu paled. The Underworld Guard's saber potential became increasingly strong, each saber more ferocious than the last. Unless he erupted with the power of the burning heavens, that would be his limit. 172 Underworld Guards. He had no idea whether or not this was enough to complete the test. As he thought of Spirity's solemn warning, he hesitated. But soon, Qin Yu suppressed the thought of using the power of the burning heavens. The consumption of this technique was far too terrifying. He could only maintain it for 2 or 3 breaths of time. At most he would be able to kill several Underworld Guards. Just as Qin Yu was about to shout, admit defeat, the summoned life form suddenly appeared in the shadow beneath him. The 100 nether sword in its left hand struck out like a poisonous tongue, instantly piercing through the Underworld Guard's body. The Underworld Guard trembled and collapsed into black fog. But at this time, the summoned life form sucked in a deep breath. A trace of black fog flew over and fell into its mouth. Qin Yu could clearly feel the excitement in its heart. Shua, the black-haired old man appeared. His sharp eyes stared at Undying. Anyone that interferes in the test will be considered a failure and will be severely punished. Undying's voice was calm. I am Master's summoned battle general, so I can naturally step in on Master's behalf. Is this also against the rules? The black-haired old man frowned. He lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then, he lifted his palm and a black sphere of light appeared. He respectfully said, May I ask my lord, is it allowed to summon battle generals during the test? The black sphere of light was quiet, without the least bit of response. The black-haired old man waited for a moment. Then, he formed a hand seal and the black sphere of light changed color. Motes of silver light appeared within the pitch-black light. His voice became even more respectful. Forgive me for disturbing the commander. Is it allowed to summon battle generals during the test? There was still no response. The black-haired old man hesitated. After a long time, he clenched his teeth and formed another hand seal. The silver sphere of light shined with a bright golden light. This subordinate has been rude and disturbed the temple master. This is a crime deserving of 10,000 deaths. But, there is one matter that this subordinate needs to confirm. Is it allowed to summon battle generals during the test? There was complete silence. The black-haired old man paled and sweat dripped down his forehead. He looked at the golden sphere of light and hesitated several times before putting it away. His expression became indifferent once more and he coldly said, according to the rules, Shengguan's silence can be regarded as tacit agreement. So, summoning battle generals is in accordance with the rules. The test will continue. Shua, the black-haired old man vanished from sight. Undying strangely chuckled. He threw himself at the Underworld Guard that emerged from the black fog. The 100 nether sword was like a bolt of black lightning as it pierced through its head. Then, with a deep breath, a wisp of black fog fell down and it let out an excited roar. Qin Yu's complexion was strange. That extraordinary black-clothed old man phantom seemed to be a very rigid program, thus Undying was able to find a loophole. However, this was clearly a good thing. As Chinyu watched Undying cut through the underworld guards as if they were vegetables, his eyes gradually lit up with excitement. In a short period of time, the number of underworld guards he killed had broken past 200. Undying was still relaxed and satisfied. Moreover, as he swallowed the black fog, his attacks became increasingly swift and fierce. If this continued, completing the test would be far too easy. Hashtag. Chapter 390. I found it. With a shout of joy, an immortal sect disciple crushed a jade slip in his hand. Soon, a massive number of cultivators from the same sect gathered from all directions. Senior Apprentice Brother. Greetings, Senior Apprentice Brother. Wenren Dongyue smiled as he walked forwards. After carefully inspecting the node, he patted the shoulder of the disciple who found it and warmly said, "Very good." The immortal sect disciple seemed as if he had received the greatest encouragement. His face flushed red with excitement. The surrounding immortal sect cultivators all revealed looks of envy. To be praised by Senior Apprentice Brother Wenren was enough to brag about for dozens of years. Wenren Dongyue turned. Junior Apprentice Sister Ningling, I'll have to trouble you. Ningling nodded. She arrived beside the node and closed her eyes to sense it. Then, she pointed a finger. In the void, layers of golden light gushed out, forming phantoms. Each one had a boundless aura and released endless dignity. Wenren Dongyue revealed a look of praise. This was truly worthy of being the bloodline of God that even his teacher held in such high regard. Its might was inconceivable. He could actually feel a bit of suppression from this golden light. The other immortal sect cultivators were the same. Their faces were filled with shock and awe. The bloodline of God was something they had only heard rumors about. Today, they had personally experienced the power of this bloodline. It was truly incomparably formidable. The node gently trembled. A faint light appeared, condensing into a large door. Ningling took a step back and the golden light around her vanished. Her expression was still calm, but her face was a bit pale. It was clear she had consumed a considerable amount of energy. Wenren Dongyue cupped his hands together. I've troubled Junior Apprentice Sister. He took out a pill. This pill can help Junior Apprentice Sister quickly recover. Please accept it. Ningling hesitated for a moment. Thank you, Senior Apprentice Brother. Wenren Dongyue smiled. He turned and said, I will lead the way. Junior Apprentice Brothers and Sisters, follow behind me. As he spoke, he was the first to step into the door of light. The immortal sect cultivators all revealed looks of admiration. With their Senior Apprentice Brother's honored status, he actually didn't hesitate to take the risk to lead the way. Just how rare was that? One immortal sect cultivator after another entered the door of light. Ningling fell in the center. Several immortal sect disciples followed at her side with vigilance. They had received orders from Senior Apprentice Brother Wenren to protect Junior Apprentice Sister Ningling with all their strength. This was because the immortal sect was going all out today. After entering the door of light, everything turned dark and light returned. Everyone found themselves on a massive chessboard. The horizontal and vertical lines on the chessboard stretched as far as the eye could see. This chessboard was so large that they couldn't see the end. At this time, Wenren Dongyue's eyes had turned a faint gray color. A strange and mysterious feeling exuded from his body. He was still standing there, but the feeling he gave off was incomparably distant, as if he weren't in the same world. After a long time, his eyes returned to normal, and there was a look of praise in them. The Heaven and Earth chessboard is named after Heaven and Earth. Although it is a bit exaggerated, the mysteries within are truly inconceivable. Senior, your strength is exceedingly high. It's not something that I, a junior, can imagine. I'm impressed. Beside him, a female cultivator looked at him with adoration in her eyes. She smiled and said, Senior Brother Wenren, the ancestors of my sect peered into the mysteries of heaven, but they could only deduce this much. As for how to solve this chess game, it's up to you. Wenren Dongwe smiled and shook his head. Junior apprentice Sister Ding praises me too much. Not even the ancestors of my sect were able to see through this game, so how could I possibly do it? I only thought of some tricks, but I don't have much confidence in whether or not these tricks will work. Senior apprentice brother's plans are flawless. We all know that. Although this chess game of heaven and earth is mysterious, it absolutely cannot block our path forward. Another immortal sect cultivator said. This person had an ordinary appearance, but his eyes were sharp and bright. It was clear he was someone with a firm will. Senior apprentice Brother Jing is right. We will definitely be able to break through and obtain the greatest lucky chance in this land of the outer realms. The female cultivator surnamed Ding earnestly said. Wenren Dongwe laughed. I am a disciple of the immortal sect, so I naturally have this kind of courage and boldness. Then I will fight with my fellow junior apprentice brothers and sisters. At this time, his eyes flashed. Our old friends aren't slow either. A huge black hexagram appeared, tearing the space apart. Many stern figures walked out from it. The overbearing man in the lead raised an eyebrow. He coldly said, Wenren Dongyue, although you aren't too good at fighting, your ability to run isn't bad. You actually managed to catch up to me. The immortal sect disciples were all enraged. But as the overbearing man swept his eyes around, the immortal sect cultivators all lowered their heads, none of them daring to meet his gaze. He sneered and revealed a look of disdain. But soon, he discovered that there was actually a woman who wasn't affected by him at all. His eyes flashed and he suddenly said, could this be the rumored junior apprentice Sister Ning Ling that the immortal sect obtained from the land of exiles with the bloodline of God? Ning Ling had a calm expression. Greetings, senior apprentice Brother Wuma of the demonic path. How interesting, how interesting. Amongst a group of commoners in the immortal sect, there is actually such a lovely and charming little girl as junior apprentice sister. I, Wuma Sijan, would like to court junior apprentice sister. I wonder if junior apprentice sister would be willing to become my Dao companion. Wuma Sijan smiled as he spoke. Wenren Donghua lightly said, Wuma Sijan, although you are the leader of the demonic path's demon son, you should still feel awe towards my immortal sect. Wuma Sijan laughed. If I don't, what can you do? Wenren Donghue took a step forwards. His aura erupted and a great sun descended. Boundless momentum swept through the highest heavens. Across from him, the elite disciples of the demonic path and their guardians all revealed looks of shock. The smile on Wuma Sijan's face vanished. His overbearing and disdainful aura was like endless black clouds that blocked out the skies. Both sides faced each other. The air was so heavy that it seemed as if it would freeze over. The immortal sect and demonic path cultivators behind them all found it hard to breathe. Only a few of the more powerful cultivators on both sides had cold eyes that shined as they prepared to fight. The immortal sect and demonic path were both extremely strong. They were both transcendent influences in the land of divinity and demons. Normally, they maintained peace on the surface in order to prevent chaos and order from collapsing. But the cultivators of both sides fought in secret, killing each other without end. Both sides' hands were stained with the blood of the other side. It was only because this matter was kept secret and the immortal sect and demonic path intentionally suppressed it that the outside world didn't know of it. Now that they had stepped into the outer realms, although the immortal sect and demonic path had to join forces to open the channel, they were already nearing the final good fortune. If there was a chance, both sides wouldn't mind heavily wounding the other side and eliminating them early, or even completely exterminating them. At this time, in the skies above the chess game of heaven and earth, another channel appeared. This channel was crimson red. 16 tall Titan warriors with eyes as large as bells walked out. As they saw the immortal sect and demonic path cultivators, they angrily roared out. Human outsiders! How dare you come here? This is blasphemy against the great totem. Only your blood can quell the anger of the totem. Titan warriors, kill them and defend the dignity of the totem. Bang, bang! After passing through the screening and arriving here, every Titan was a true warrior of their tribe. Now, killing intent erupted from their hearts and billowing blood energy fluctuations caused one's heart to tremble. In particular, Tuba and several other Titans. Their blood energy was so strong that even Wenren Dongyue and Wuma Sijan frowned. Calm down! Tuba roared out loud. He stubbornly pulled back the red-eyed tutu. Do not forget why we came to the Holy Land today. The enraged Titan warriors revealed unwilling expressions. They gasped for breath, their eyes still as fierce as before. Tuba took a deep breath. His icy cold eyes swept over the crowd. Intruding, my tribe. Totem Holy Land, blood enmity, we will definitely take revenge. He turned around, about to lead the Titan warriors into the chess game of heaven and earth. Wenren Dongyue's figure flashed and he blocked in front of them. He cupped his hands together and said, we took the risk to intrude into this place in order to seek lucky chances. We have no intention of making things difficult for the Titan warriors, but we do not have the means to pass through the chess game of heaven and earth. I ask fellow warriors to help us. What he spoke was actually the language of the Titans. Hearing his words, the Titans sneered again and again. Tutu crazily roared, human outsiders, we have received the approval of the totem so we can naturally pass through here. You can just wait for your deaths here. You want us to help you. Dream on. Stop dreaming. Wenren Dongyue's complexion was calm. He lightly said, although we cannot enter, it shouldn't be difficult to stop you all. Your race's holy land is only open for a limited time. Once it closes, neither side will obtain anything. Tutu roared out, you dare. The Titan warriors all seethed with killing intent. Wuma Sijan laughed. Wenren Dongyue, you immortal sect people are truly despicable. I can't believe you could think of such a method. He took a step forwards. Then, count my demonic path's participation in this matter. If we cannot obtain any good fortune, then we can all return empty-handed. Tuba's complexion paled and his eyes filled with anger. But, he was well aware that if it was only the immortal sect blocking them, then the Titan warriors would have a chance to break through. But with the demonic path cultivators added in, it would be impossible for them to pass. All of you shut up. We must agree to this matter, otherwise if we cannot obtain the blessing of the totem, our tribes won't be able to last much longer. No matter how angry or unwilling they were, they had to accept this. Despicable human outsiders, we agree to bring you in, but you can only bring in 5 people at most, not one more. Unfortunately, this sort of unfair distribution trick was useless against the outstanding disciples of the immortal sect and demonic path. Wuma Sijan sneered, my demonic path wants 5 spots. Wenren Dongyue lightly said, the immortal sect also wants 5. Tuba roared, impossible. The Holy Land can only allow 17 people to enter at most. You have taken too many, it is impossible for us to agree. Wenren Dongyue calmly said, you will agree. Because while we can withstand the consequences of failure, you cannot. Tuba's body shivered. The Titan race's current situation was their greatest weakness. His eyes turned red and he coldly said, fine, we agree. When had the dignified Titan warriors been reduced to the point of being forced by others? Many of them shed tears of humiliation. These damned human outsiders. Tutu suddenly roared, Qin Yu. I, Tutu, swear on my honor as a warrior that I will tear you to pieces. Qin Yu, I, the Titan warrior Tuzan, swear that I will kill you. Human outsider Qin Yu. In the Titan warrior's opinion, the reason the immortal sect and demonic path cultivators could enter was because of this spy, Qin Yu. So at this time, the one they hated the most was Qin Yu. Qin Yu was an extremely unfamiliar name. The immortal sect and demonic path cultivators were surprised. They had no idea what this cultivator called Qin Yu had done to cause the Titans to hate him so much. Moreover, what did the current situation have to do with this Qin Yu? Only one person's eyes widened the moment he heard the name Qin Yu, revealing a look of disbelief. Schwa. Chapter 391. Tutu roared, Qin Yu was eaten by me. Do you want to know where he is? He's right here. He slapped his belly, causing loud thumping sounds to ring out. Ning Ling's mind was in chaos. She took a deep breath and suppressed her thoughts. If you tell me where Qin Yu is, I promise I won't attack you on my own initiative. With just you. Tutu sneered again and again. Wenren Dongyue revealed a look of surprise. He hesitated for a moment and said, Junior apprentice sister Ning Ling's tyrannical bloodline is the key to my immortal sex trip. If she agrees not to attack us on her own initiative, that is a great show of sincerity. You should grasp this opportunity. Tutu's complexion changed. With Wenren Dongyue's strength and status, he disdained lying about this sort of matter. The immortal sect and demonic path occupied 10 spots and their Titan race only had 7. If Ning Ling didn't attack them on her own initiative, the pressure on them would be greatly reduced. Tuba said in a low voice, Qin Yu is a human outsider. He entered the Holy Land with us, but just as we were about to arrive, he suddenly vanished from sight. So now, we have no idea where he went. Ning Ling cast a grateful glance at Wenren Dongyue. May I ask what he looks like? Tuba shook his head. In the eyes of our Titan race, you human outsiders are all similar in appearance. Oh, he has a head of gray hair. Ning Ling's eyes darkened. Gray hair, that shouldn't be Qin Yu. Could he be that fierce character that appeared on the ancient perishment decree? She bitterly smiled. After coming to the land of divinity and demons, only then did she realize how difficult it was to cultivate in the land of exiles. Qin Yu almost never had the chance to enter the land of divinity and demons. And even if he did come, it would be impossible for him to grow to the point where he had the qualifications to enter the infinite realm in such a short period of time. She had been overthinking things. Taking a deep breath, Ning Ling nodded in thanks. My promise is still valid. I won't attack the Titan race on my own initiative. She turned and returned to the immortal sect cultivators. The immortal sect cultivators all had strange expressions. They couldn't understand why this proud daughter of heaven with a divine bloodline, someone who was highly regarded by the immortal sect, someone who didn't respond to countless male disciples, would be so flustered by a single name. Moreover, it was Qin Yu, a name that everyone could tell was a man's name. There was too much information in this, and it was hard to not overthink it. Yu Bai's complexion darkened. When they were in the Qi Empire, he had already taken a liking to Ning Ling. But she had always maintained a cold demeanor, so Yu Bai wasn't too worried about this. After all, he had some fame amongst the younger generation of cultivators in the immortal sect. But after entering the infinite realm, he obtained news from the immortal sect. Ning Ling had been determined to possess the bloodline of God, and her status had risen by leaps and bounds. She was now an important existence comparable to several core disciples of the immortal sect. What left him even more startled, angry, and helpless was that Wenren Dongwei seemed to have some unspeakable goal towards Ning Lingyu. Bai knew that the disparity between him and Wenren Dongwei was far too great, so great that he immediately put away all his thoughts and maintained a respectful distance from Ning Ling. But even though Yu Bai feared Wenren Dongwei, he was still arrogant towards others. Just who was this Qin Yu that he could move junior apprentice sister Ning Ling's heart? He didn't dare to say a single word about losing to Wenren Dongwei, but losing to someone else was something he couldn't tolerate. Yu Bai's heart hardened. All of the resentment he didn't dare to vent was completely transferred onto this person called Qin Yu. You better not let me meet you. Yu Bai roared inwardly. He also wanted to know what Wenren Dongwei was feeling right now. But as he looked at him, he was still calm, as if he hadn't been moved at all. Tuba nodded. He swept his eyes around. Each of you choose 5 people and follow us. He turned and communicated with the Titan warriors. Soon, he came up with a list of 7. The strongest Titan warriors were certainly on this list. After all, the treasures of the Holy Land represented a chance for the continuation of their tribe. They had to do their best. The 5 from the immortal sect were Wenren Dongwei, Ning Ling, the man surnamed Jing, the woman surnamed Ding, and a white-haired old man. The last one was clearly a protector. Besides Wuma Xizhan, the other 5 from the demonic path were actually quadruplets. Their appearances were completely the same and even their movements were synchronized. Their faces were as cold and callous as stone. Tuba took a deep breath. Come with us. Leaving behind everyone to wait, a group of 17 people stepped into the chess game of heaven and earth. But after several steps, their figures vanished from sight. The 500th. Undying revealed a distressed expression. He had been forced to use the copper mirror's soul-setting divine light in order to stab the 100 nether sword into the underworld guard's body and kill it. This was clearly an illusory object condensed from the black fog, but when the 100 nether sword pierced through it, it emitted a sound like it was piercing through dozens of thick cowhide. It was clearly difficult to do so. From this, it could be seen that the body of the underworld guard had reached an inconceivable boundary. Qin Yu had a premonition that even if he exploded with the power of the burning heavens, he still might not be able to kill an underworld guard. It had become far too terrifying. Luckily, at this time, the speed at which the underworld guards appeared had greatly decreased. Thinking about it, condensing such a terrifying underworld guard was a tremendous burden on the black fog. A moment later, the black fog began to churn, and another underworld guard walked out. It was very different from the previous underworld guards. It wore a sealed visor that only revealed a pair of deep purple eyes. It wore a gorgeous purple full-body armor, and its body was not bulky or bulky. Instead, it gave off a slender feeling. It held a long sword in its hands. The sword blade was inlaid with 7 black crystals. Faint traces of light circulated around it, releasing an aura that left one's heart racing. Undying cried out, "Underworld Great Commander." He lifted his hand and the copper mirror flashed. The soul-setting divine light howled out. This strange copper mirror spirit treasure's power rose dramatically in his hands. Even after using it dozens of times, it was still able to move. But this time, the invincible soul-setting divine light was cut apart by a single sword strike. The underworld great commander's deep purple eyes revealed a strange light. He swept his eyes around and began to speak. "I wonder which supreme being has summoned my projection here." His voice carried with it a terrifying vibration that could penetrate all obstacles and resound throughout the arena. Shua, the black-clothed old man's phantom appeared. Without expression, he said, "Complete your duty. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask." The underworld great commander's purple eyes brightened. "This is only a stiff projection. It seems that the master of this place has already perished in the endless river of time." He paused for a moment and then let out a deep chuckle. don't you know that summoning the Underworld Great Commander requires sufficient compensation? Your master has already died, so who else can stop me? Then, those two, no, I can smell the scent of 3 souls. One is young and fresh, one is so delicious that it makes me tremble, and the last one makes me feel disgusted. But, I am most interested in this disgusted soul. I will have these 3 souls serve as my Underworld Great Commander, Long Adonai Kucha, as sacrifices to descend into this world. The black-haired old man's phantom roared out, "Evil creature, cease your insolence." He lifted a hand and countless runes appeared in the skies above the arena. The Underworld Great Commander coldly coughed. If your master were to activate it, this array formation would be enough to instantly erase me. But with just a puppet projection like you, break for me. With a loud shout, he raised the sword in his hand and the black cage instantly shattered. The dark grey sword light that represented endless despair and death fell into the runes, causing them to rapidly collapse and fade away. The black-haired old man's eyes widened in anger. It seemed as if it wanted to say something, but the Underworld Great Commander casually smashed it apart with a palm. Qin Yu's head was still dizzy. The Underworld Great Commander's voice just now had caused his soul to shake, making him feel as if he would explode at any moment. Now that he was barely able to recover, he saw the scene in front of him. The host of the test had actually been killed. Had he gone too far and finally lost control? He had said that he would end things once he admitted defeat, but was that still useful now? I admit defeat. As he thought, there was no movement at all. The Underworld Great Commander stepped forwards. What an interesting boy. Your soul should be delicious and I will definitely savor it. But right now, I have an even more important matter to attend to. Beneath the visor, a sharp light surged in his deep purple eyes. He stared at Undying. The smell on your body disgusts me, but I have no idea where this smell comes from. As the Underworld Great Commander, this sort of matter leaves me surprised. If you can tell me where you came from, perhaps I can forgive you and bring you back to the Underworld to become my personal guard. Undying was silent for several breaths of time. Then, he sneered, there are many Underworld Great Commanders, but I've never heard of your name before. You should be someone who was recently promoted. What is your relationship with one of the Underworld's 3 dark moons, Long Adonai, Blackstream? The Underworld Great Commander paused, a dignified look in his eyes. He first bowed to express his respect and then sincerely said, I, Long Adonai Kucha, am a bloodline descendant of ancestor Blackstream. 13,000 years ago, I successfully became an Underworld Great Commander. Since you recognize my ancestor and also know many secrets of my underworld, you should be a powerhouse of this world. But, why can't I sense the aura of your world? Undying sneered. You don't need to care about that. All you need to know is that I am not someone you can provoke. Now, screw off and return to the underworld, otherwise don't blame me for not giving face to an old friend of mine. Qin Yu let out a long breath of relief. Although he was shocked by Undying's tone, looking at the situation, the Underworld Great Commander was truly shaken. If he could extricate himself from this crisis, that would certainly be the best outcome. But at this time, he suddenly received a sound transmission from Undying. Little Master, things are really troublesome this time. In a moment, I will go all out. The woman in your soul space can no longer be relied on. Take care of yourself. Qin Yu was startled. At this time, the Underworld Great Commander reared back his head and laughed. If you know the name of my ancestor, then that means you were once a formidable existence that touched upon the world. Unfortunately, the world has collapsed and all that is left over is such a weak and frail existence. How pitiful. Rather than living such a lowly life, you might as well offer your soul that was once purified by the world to me. Become a part of my soul flame and open up my road to ascension. Chapter 392. Qin Yu's field of vision darkened. Not only was he unable to see, but even his soul seemed to fall into an abyss of eternal darkness. In this darkness, time and space lost all meaning and all of his strength was suppressed. Only the crescent purple moon above his soul was barely able to emit a faint purple light. This purple light allowed Qin Yu's soul to move a little so that it wouldn't fall into complete stillness. However, this feeling of being able to move around but being unable to sense anything in the outside world only made one feel even more fear and despair. Just at this moment, little Ling's figure appeared in the dim purple light. Her complexion was increasingly pale, like a transparent sheet of paper. She gave off a feeling of weakness, as if she would collapse and dissipate with a gentle breeze. Qin Yu, my time is limited. Listen to what I have to say next. Although the Underworld Great Commander is only a projection, he has already obtained the strength of the world. He is not someone that the current Undying can contend with. At most he can last for a while. If you want to survive, you can only rely on yourself. I'll teach you a technique that can forcefully lock your own life force. Even if you activate the power of the burning heavens, your exhaustion will be greatly reduced. But you have to be clear about one thing. The blood, magic power, and lifespan consumed by the power of the burning heaven are not truly burned away. Instead, they are sacrificed to the demonic altar. What you are doing is equivalent to cheating, embezzling the power that should be sacrificed to it. Once the demonic altar notices this, it will definitely punish you. I will use my own slumber as the price to conceal the demon altar's perception of you. You do not need to feel guilty. After all, I am the main reason behind your current situation. After a pause, Spirity faintly smiled. If you really want to help me, then you must become stronger as soon as possible. Only then can I borrow the strength of your soul to awaken sooner. Then, goodbye, my little master. She flicked her finger and a mass of light flew between Qin Yu's eyebrows. Then, her figure scattered into countless motes of light, vanishing from his soul space. At this moment, the connection between Qin Yu and her was nearly completely severed. Luckily, there was still a final trace of it that allowed him to determine that Spirity was still alive. Countless emotions tumbled in Qin Yu's heart. Finally, they turned into gratitude and guilt. He swore to himself that he would help Spirity wake up as soon as possible. He restrained his thoughts and focused all of his energy on the motes of light that Spirity had sent into his soul. A strange fluctuation spread out from this mode of light, instantly covering Qin Yu's entire soul. Then, endless information surged out, branding itself deep within Qin Yu's soul, becoming impossible to erase. This was a strange technique called Spirit Lock, to lock one's own spiritual essence so that it wouldn't scatter or escape, and that the heavens and earth couldn't seize it. Just the words "open the door" left Qin Yu shocked. Then, his entire consciousness was immersed within. Within the arena, beneath the 7 black suns, Undying had turned into a phantom, wildly attacking the Underworld Great Commander. The soul-burying flag behind him erupted with billowing black gas that wrapped around his body and turned into a dignified robe. There was an exquisite and lifelike ghost face on the front of the robe. The third eye between its eyebrows was closed, and a trace of blood could be vaguely seen. The Underworld Grand Commander didn't move very quickly. However, every time he stabbed out with his sword, he lifted it up, and he slashed it out with shocking power. His terrifying aura was like a tempest, and wherever it swept out, the heavens would collapse and the earth would cave in. Undying didn't dare to face him head-on. But as he attacked more and more, the Underworld Great Commander's aura grew stronger and stronger, like a demon god descending into the world. Suddenly, Undying's figure vanished. When he reappeared, he was near the Underworld Great Commander's side. He lifted the 100 nether sword and thrust it out. The Underworld Great Commander slashed out with his sword. The 100 nether sword collided with it and trembled. Then, it shattered into countless pieces that howled in all directions. At this time, the third eye between Undying's eyebrows opened and a terrifying blood-red light gushed out. "Ah, I was waiting for this move of yours." The Underworld Great Commander lifted a hand and pressed down. A black eye opened in his palm. It was pitch black, as if it were a vortex that led to another world. All of the terrifying blood-red light was swallowed up by the black eye in his palm. But, its might surpassed his expectations. The Underworld Great Commander stuffily coughed and the purple flames in his eye dimmed. Blood flowed out from the black eye in his palm. But not only did he not become angry, but he instead roared out in excitement. "Such a weak strength can actually injure me. It seems that when you were at your peak in the past, you were far more formidable than I imagined. That's for the best. There must still be some clear traces of the world left in your soul, and you might even have opened up your own road. If I swallow your soul, there is an extremely high chance that I will obtain the turning point to advance." Undying shook his head, his voice a bit helpless. "I originally thought that after I escaped I would have a chance to start anew. But now, it seems that the inertia of this world is too strong. Those that should die will vanish forever." He paused for a moment and then continued to say, "Little fellow, since you are Blackstream's bloodline descendant and you have smoothly advanced to the position of Underworld Great Commander, did he not tell you not to underestimate any existence that has touched upon the world?" The purple flames in the Underworld Great Commander's eyes jumped and a fierce sense of crisis shrouded his mind. He lifted the sword in front of him and a hazy world phantom appeared, protecting him within. In the next moment, this world phantom violently shook. A dent appeared in it and countless cracks began to rapidly spread outwards. Walala, the world phantom dispersed. The Underworld Great Commander cried out miserably. The purple flames in his eyes weakened to less than a tenth of their original brightness. They were incomparably dim and nearly extinguished. Undying maintained his pointing posture. He let out a long sigh and his figure scattered, turning into a shadow that returned to Qin Yu's shadow. "Just a little bit more and you would have destroyed my projection in this world. But this little bit of difference is enough to cause you to die." The Underworld Great Commander's voice was low and icy cold. "I will tear apart your souls and swallow them up bit by bit." With a step forwards, the Underworld Great Commander appeared in front of Qin Yu. He lifted his palm and the black eyes in his palm opened once more. At this time, Qin Yu stomped his feet and stormed backwards. The Underworld Great Commander was startled. He sneered, "Little fellow, where can you possibly run to?" He lifted his hand and grasped out. Qin Yu froze in midair. Shua, Qin Yu's eyes flashed open. He roared out loud, "Soul Lock!" In the void, millions of runes instantly condensed and howled into Qin Yu's body. At this time, all of his aura vanished from sight, as if he had been completely isolated from the outside world. Then, without hesitation, Qin Yu detonated the power of the burning heavens within his body. Dyed blood, burning magic, burning life. Bang! His aura wildly erupted, breaking apart the suppressive strength around him. He lifted a hand and pointed out a finger. Boundless blue finger. With a single finger, winds and clouds stirred. With a loud rumbling sound, a finger phantom descended from the heavens. It rapidly condensed and its volume rapidly increased. In the blink of an eye, it reached 1,000 feet in size. The fingerprints on its surface were clearly visible, as if a demon god had attacked from the highest heavens. The Underworld Great Commander frowned. If he had just arrived, then even if he had been standing there, this strike wouldn't have been able to break through his defenses. But after being repeatedly wounded by Undying, and in particular the shattering of the World Phantom, this had caused tremendous damage to his projection. His strength was now less than a tenth of its original state. Even so, it was impossible for this sort of inferior attack to cause any harm to the formidable Underworld Great Commander. He raised the sword in his hand and black sword light cut out like a waterfall. The finger that descended from the heavens trembled and disintegrated. Qin Yu's face paled, but as the power of the burning heavens erupted, he instantly recovered. The underworld great commander revealed a shocked expression. This was because he could clearly feel that the sword in his hand had been damaged. How was this possible? Even if it was only a projection, the sword still possessed an indestructible attribute. Undying's attacks just now hadn't been able to damage it in the slightest. But now, this puny ant in front of him had actually damaged his projection. Even the sword itself had been affected and its might had weakened. Apart from shock and anger, there was also an incomparable heartache. It had to be known that this sword was a treasure personally bestowed upon him by the Blackstream ancestor after he became the great commander of the Netherworld. It was extremely precious, and even the slightest damage would require a great price to repair. How hateful! You lowly ant, you have angered the great Lord Kucha. I will leave behind a wisp of your soul and toss it into the underworld sea of purgatory flames to suffer for 10,000 years. But in a state where the power of the burning heavens was ignited, Qin Yu remained as calm as a machine. He wasn't affected at all. He lifted a hand and pointed out a finger. Blue spirit finger. Woo-woo, woo-woo, a cold wind stirred up in the void, and phantoms began to appear in the majestic arena. Some were the size of a normal person, and some were more than 300 meters tall. However, no matter what their shape was, each one of them contained a powerful aura. In particular, at the highest level of the arena, there was a massive stone throne. This phantom was 10,000 feet tall, and just by sitting there, it suppressed the entire space. The underworld great commander screamed in anger, "Spirit summoning art, just who are you?" Qin Yu didn't reply. He expressionlessly pointed out a finger and the phantom of a finger appeared. The countless phantoms in the arena trembled and turned into streams of air that rapidly poured into the finger. In the blink of an eye, the translucent phantoms of the fingers turned a deep gray, like the withered and dead vegetation in the middle of winter. An aura of annihilation, death, and destruction gushed out from the finger phantom. But this wasn't the end. On the stone throne, the 10,000-foot phantom suddenly stood up. It stepped through space and appeared on the blue spirit finger. A sharp light flashed in its dim eyes and it emitted a deep rumbling sound. A mere underworld great commander dares to be insolent in Teacher's Palace. You are seeking death. With a step, the blue spirit finger fused into the finger phantom. The finger phantom wildly grew, reaching thousands of feet in the blink of an eye. Its color turned from a deep gray to a rich black, and there were even specks of blood red that appeared in the darkness. Bang! An endless and cruel aura erupted from the finger phantom. It instantly vanished and then reappeared, arriving right above the underworld great commander's head. Ah! The underworld great commander roared. A black crystal on the blade of his sword actually exploded on its own. Then, a terrifying aura of darkness covered him. A heaven-shaking and earth-shattering collision occurred. The entire arena trembled and countless cracks tore through the ground, extending all around the seats. The earth quaked. In just several breaths of time, the entire arena was reduced to ruins. The blue spirit finger vanished from sight and the aura of darkness was nearly exhausted. The pitiful figure of the underworld great commander was revealed. It seemed as if it had been trampled upon by a pack of wild beasts. Its visor had long since disappeared, revealing an incomparably ugly face that looked like the fusion of a goat and a wild boar. The gorgeous purple armor on its body was now in tatters, revealing terrifying wounds. No matter how much darkness strength tumbled around it, it was unable to repair them. However, what the underworld great commander found the most difficult to accept was that one of the black crystals on the sword in its hand had actually exploded. There were even several small cracks that appeared on the blade of the sword where it had exploded. If it were only the destruction of its projection, the underworld great commander wouldn't care so much. But, through its connection with its true body in the distant underworld, it discovered that one of the black crystals on its true sword had also exploded. The cracks on the blade were exactly the same. This attack, through the projection, directly attacked the sword in the underworld that was far away. If it weren't for the black crystals exploding, this strike might have caused terrifying damage to its true body. For the fastest and most error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 393. When the underworld great commander looked at Qin Yu, the purple flames in his eyes were filled with rage and dread. He thought about how Qin Yu had the protection of undying and that there was another powerful soul hidden within his body. Could this humble ant in front of him be the reincarnation of some almighty being? However, the aura of his soul was very young and did not match the aura of a reincarnated body. Although he couldn't figure it out, the underworld great commander still leaned towards the first possibility. He believed that Qin Yu was the reincarnation of a formidable existence. That was the only way to explain how he could unleash such terrifying power despite being so weak. A dark purple flame appeared in the underworld great commander's eyes. It erupted with endless greed. This sort of reincarnated body of a supreme being had a complete mark of its previous life. If it could swallow it, there would be countless possibilities in the future. So what if the dark crystal was destroyed? Compared to a reincarnated soul of a powerful existence, it was not worth mentioning. Die! As he roared, the underworld great commander clenched his teeth and used a secret art. His main body in the underworld ignited a drop of god blood in his heart, forcefully crossing space and time to pour a formidable strength into this projection. All of the projection's injuries were instantly healed, and its aura became even stronger. The world projection descended once more, and it was even more solid than the first time. It rumbled as it circulated, releasing a powerful pressure. Qin Yu's body stiffened. Every movement he made was incomparably difficult. As he moved his arms, his flesh, blood, and bones emitted pained groans. But his eyes were still as cold as ever, and there was not the slightest hint of emotion on his face. He pointed out the third finger, vast sea finger. With the appearance of this finger, the spirit-locking art instantly collapsed and Qin Yu's cultivation rapidly fell. Within his Dantian sea, the five-element nascent souls cried out, on the verge of collapse. His appearance rapidly aged, as if hundreds of years had passed in the blink of an eye. His body shriveled like a withered tree, as if all of his vitality had evaporated. This wasn't the sacrifice of the power of the burning heavens, but the price he had to pay to activate the third finger. There was no way to describe the scene after the third finger was pointed out, because it became incomparably huge in his field of vision, so huge that it occupied his entire vision. It was as if the entire world had become incomparably small in front of it, and could only be easily crushed by this one finger. It didn't seem fast, but as soon as it appeared, the blue sea finger landed on the world projection summoned by the underworld great commander. Ah! It howled in pain. The purple flames in its eye sockets revealed a hint of fear and disbelief. This was because the world projection was collapsing. And what was even more terrifying was that the underworld great commander could feel an extremely terrifying aura passing through his projection. It traced traces of space and time, rapidly transmitting towards the distant underworld. It was that kind of terrifying tracing attack. And this time, it was even more terrifying than the blue spirit finger. It was so terrifying that the underworld great commander was terrified. He was worried that his original body would be directly erased. His eyes widened as he stubbornly stared at Qin Yu, howling in his heart. Even if he was the reincarnation of an almighty being, how could he activate such a terrifying strength with such a weak cultivation? Bang! The phantom of the netherworld great commander collapsed. He ended his own projection to avoid being erased. The icy coldness in Qin Yu's eyes faded away like a falling tide. His body slumped and he fell to his knees. Pain and the aura of decay spread through his body and he violently coughed. His eyes were filled with bitterness. The final strike broke even the spirit lock technique, instantly stealing away almost all of his vitality. It had to be known that he had already reached divine soul. In addition to his powerful king step demon body, his lifespan far surpassed that of cultivators at his level. Living for 3,000 years wouldn't be a problem at all. In other words, every time he used the blue sea finger, he would lose 3,000 years of his lifespan. Compared to this, his blood vitality drying up and his nascent soul nearly collapsing could be called insignificant. Within the chess game of heaven and earth, there was a great deal of destruction and killing intent hidden within. It wasn't that the Titan warriors hadn't thought of finding a chance to escape from the immortal and demonic cultivators, or even sending them into a danger zone. But whether it was Wenren Dongyue or Wuma Sijan, they were both calm and wise. Their sharp eyes seemed to be able to see through all lies and lies. After several moments of hesitation, Tuba gave up on the idea of playing any tricks. He winked at his tribesmen and honestly led the way. As the followers of the totem, they had the qualifications to pass through the chess game of heaven and earth. With the immortal and demonic cultivators borrowing strength, they were able to pass through unscathed. "We've arrived," Tuba said in a low voice. "We will awaken the Holy Land Messenger and open the entrance for us. Do not resist." He, Tutu, and the other two Titan warriors each took out a chess piece from their chest. 2 were black and 2 were white. That's right, they were the smooth and round things that looked like small mounds on the ground. The 4 of them bit their fingertips and dripped their blood onto the chess piece. It was directly absorbed by the chess piece and emitted a black and white light. A figure appeared. If Qin Yu were here, he would discover that this was the projection of the black-haired old man who had opened the examination for him. However, this projection was even stiffer and its eyes were dim. By passing the chess game of heaven and earth, you have the qualifications to enter the core region. Originally, the projection should have directly opened the entrance once they arrived here. Tuba and the others had already been reminded of this by the great priest. But they discovered that the black-haired old man's projection seemed to freeze. His body shivered and his dim eyes began to glaze over. It was clear that something wasn't right. "You had best not play any tricks," Wuma Sijan sneered, killing intent rising from his body. Tutu was flustered and exasperated. "Who is playing tricks? We don't even know what's going on." Seeing the Titans all anxious, Wenren Donghua frowned. If there really was a problem, wouldn't this trip have been in vain? This time, the immortal sect disciples had gathered here. If they didn't obtain a great harvest, then they would have suffered a great loss when the infinite realm opened. Bang! A white chess piece suddenly exploded, turning into a beam of white light that fused into the black-haired old man's body. The aura he emitted rose, but it was clearly not enough. Following that, there were 3 loud bangs. Beneath the shocked eyes of the Titan warriors, the remaining 3 chess pieces all exploded, turning into light that was absorbed by the black-haired old man. He finally began to move. He lifted his hand and began to draw in the void, but each stroke was extremely difficult. The further he drew the rune, the slower his movements became. Even his body became transparent. It was clear he had consumed far too much strength. The Titans nearly cried. These 4 chess pieces were the holy objects of their tribe that the great priest had given them. They were the key to opening the gift of the totem. They had been passed down for countless generations and had always been used normally. But now, these 4 chess pieces had all exploded. How could they explain this to the great priest when they returned? Luckily, the black-haired old man's phantom managed to last until the rune was completed. Then, it submerged into space and a large door appeared, opening on its own to reveal a long passage behind. Wuma Sijan's eyes brightened. Choose one of you to enter first. Tutu didn't say a word. He was the first to step through the door. Everything was calm. Let's go. Wenren Donghua flicked his sleeves and led Ningling and the others through the door. Tutu and the other Titan warriors followed close behind. Wuma Sijan waved his hand. He brought the quadruplets of demonic path cultivators behind him. But just as the last demonic path cultivator stepped in, an invisible strength forced him to retreat. Senior apprentice brother Wuma, I cannot enter. The demonic path cultivator's face was filled with anger. Wuma Sijan roared out, Titans, you dare to lie to me. Bang! A wild aura wildly erupted. Tutu's face was filled with shock. Impossible. The Holy Land has 17 spots to enter, this was already decided from the start. He hurriedly explained, since we brought you in, it is impossible for us to lie about something that can be easily seen through. Wenren Donghua lightly said, Wuma Sijan, the Titans shouldn't be lying. Wuma Sijan sneered. That's good. One of the Titans can leave and allow my demonic path disciples to enter. Tutu shook his head. That's impossible. Once we enter the core region, even if we leave now, the spot has already been used. It is impossible to give it to someone else. His complexion changed. He thought of a possibility and immediately revealed a look of anger. There are 17 spots and only 16 people can enter. Could it be that someone entered the core region before us? Wenren Donghua frowned. Let's go. Shua, the 5 immortal sect cultivators flew straight to the end of the channel. Tutu clenched his teeth and roared, let's go. The 7 Titan warriors were depressed to the extreme. First, Qinyu had passed the test, and then the immortal and demonic path outsiders had entered. Now, there was actually someone who had entered the core region a step earlier than them. The chessboard of heaven and earth was inconceivably powerful. Even the great priest had said that it was impossible to force their way through, so how could someone have entered before them? Wuma Sijan's complexion was cloudy and uncertain. He could see that the Titans weren't lying. In other words, the reason that someone was left outside was purely because he had been too cautious and entered last. There was actually someone who entered before me. Interesting, truly interesting. His voice was calm and he revealed a light smile. But the 3 demonic path cultivators beside him revealed looks of fear. Every time senior apprentice brother Wuma had this sort of expression, someone would be unlucky, extremely unlucky. Shua, Wuma Sijan stepped forwards. His body turned into a phantom as he instantly overtook the Titans and chased after the immortal sect disciples. When 4 demonic path disciples joined forces, they could display an extremely fierce technique. But since only 3 of them had entered, it was useless. Wuma Sijan hurried alone, so his speed was naturally the fastest. He sneered as he chased after the 5 immortal sect disciples and rapidly fled into the distance. The female cultivator surnamed Ding anxiously said, Senior apprentice brother Wenren, don't worry about us. Hurry and chase after them. Wenren Donghua nodded. All right. Junior apprentice brothers and sisters, I'll be leaving first. Shua, he left the group and his speed instantly rose by several levels until he was on par with Wuma Sijan. He turned into 2 phantoms that vanished from sight. Old and decaying, Qinyu's vitality was as weak as gossamer. He sat powerlessly in the ruins of the arena, waiting for the end of his life to arrive. There was only silence in his ears. He could clearly hear his incomparably difficult heartbeat. Every heartbeat consumed the last of his weak vitality. The shadow of death was unprecedentedly thick. It covered Qinyu's mind. He didn't want to accept this result, but he was powerless to resist it. Life was like this. You never knew whether your choice would be a pleasant surprise or a disaster. Even though the disc was such a miraculous object, what it brought him in the end was death. And what was even more laughable was that in order to achieve this result, he had risked his life to rush through the Titan race's sacred lake. Then, he had done everything in his power to complete the test of killing the underworld guards. When Undying attacked, he had been incomparably happy. He thought that this was a wonderful result and that completing the test would be incomparably easy. He had even begun to look forward to the rewards he would receive after passing. But now, even the one who issued the test had been killed by the Underworld Great Commander. All of this had lost its meaning. As for him, he would be left here alone, waiting for death to arrive. This was truly a sad, sorrowful, and helpless ending. Qin Yu's lips twitched and he bitterly smiled. But as he thought about how he had ended up like this, he couldn't help but spit out many vulgar words from the bottom of his heart. As for the incomparably powerful master who built this place, this young master is about to die, so why do I still need to fear your grandmother's leg? As if the power of his grandmother's leg was too great, the light in front of him wriggled with difficulty. Then, it condensed into the figure of a black-haired old man. He looked at Qin Yu, incomparably gratified. You killed the Underworld Great Commander and protected the dignity of the Holy Land. Qin Yu, you have done well. I must reward you. For the fastest and most accurate novel reading, please visit Chapter 394. He was like a traveler on the verge of death in the desert. When he fell into despair, he suddenly turned around and discovered that there was a clear and sweet spring water beside him. To put it simply, happiness had come too suddenly. Qin Yu wasn't prepared at all. Then, all sorts of random thoughts in his mind were instantly tossed to the highest heavens. In particular, all of his disrespect towards the master of this island was cleanly buried away. Finally, he no longer had the strange thought of sitting up straight even if he died so that his future successors could see his tenacious will. He relaxed and laid down on his back. His chest rose and fell with difficulty as he panted. Although he was still in a terrible state, he was relaxed and filled with joy. This was because Qin Yu knew that he wouldn't die. The black-haired old man's phantom had a warm expression and a smile on his face. But, Qin Yu knew that this was only a puppet projection. His current performance was a setting created by the person who created him. Although he didn't care much about it, his dull eyes still revealed a bit of anticipation. Your vitality is nearly exhausted. This is the result of forcefully stimulating a strength that surpasses your limits. Let me help you restore it first. The black-haired old man lifted a hand and a jade box appeared in his hand. There is an eternal primordial fruit inside. It can help you restore all of your lifespan. Eat it. Qin Yu opened the jade box. A rich aura of life instantly submerged him. All the pores on his withered mortal body opened up, greedily absorbing it. He could clearly feel his vitality begin to recover. Just by taking in a few breaths of this aura, he could restore his vitality. The value of this eternal primordial fruit was likely unimaginable. At this point, Qin Yu naturally didn't have any thoughts of keeping it for the future. He took several bites and ate the entire fruit. Bang! Like a dim flame that had been poured with boiling oil, Qin Yu's vitality began to rise at a shocking speed. His saggy, shriveled skin, which was full of old age spots, quickly became smooth and moist. His hair, which was as dry as weeds, his withered hair that was like weeds, regained its elasticity once more. Even the gray hair that was caused by refining the revival good fortune pill turned pitch black. Surging blood energy erupted from his body. Compared to the beginning, it was several times stronger. Countless tiny runes appeared in Qin Yu's blood. They flashed for a moment before turning into information that entered his soul. Demon body combat skill, choking finger. When activated by the demon body, there was a 10% chance of ignoring all defenses and having an absolute defense-breaking attribute. There was also a 1% chance of triggering an instant kill attribute. Qin Yu was dumbfounded. Not only had this fruit restored his vitality, but it had also pushed his King Step demon body to small success and even awakened a demon body combat skill. A 10% chance of ignoring defense and a 1% chance of killing in a single strike. This was a heaven-defying and unimaginable method. It was truly worthy of being called the exclusive combat skill that could truly release the terrifying might of the demon body. For him to successfully awaken at small success of the King's Step, although luck played a part, Qin Yu felt that this was absolutely related to the eternal primordial fruit. And this wasn't the end. After the eternal primordial fruit completely restored Qin Yu's lifespan, there was still a portion of its strength remaining that continued to strengthen his mortal body. He could clearly feel that his body was becoming stronger at a shocking speed. Within his bloodline, mysterious runes appeared once more. More information flowed into his mind. Demon Body Combat Technique, Strangling Finger, 2nd level. When activated by the demon body, there was a 30% chance of ignoring all defenses and having an absolute defense-breaking attribute. There was also a 5% chance of triggering an instant kill attribute. This was large success of the King Step demon body. Moreover, it was extremely heaven-defying. He had awakened a demon body combat skill once more, and it just so happened to be the next level of the strangling finger. Qin Yu was stunned for a moment before a look of wild joy appeared on his face. This should be what it meant when one survived a great calamity and was destined for good fortune. Moreover, he was sure that the reason he could continuously awaken a demon body combat skill was because of the eternal primordial fruit. A single fruit had restored 3,000 years of life in just several breaths of time and had allowed his demon body to reach large success. Moreover, he had continuously awakened the strangling finger. This effect was simply heaven-defying to the point of unimaginable. There was still a small amount of the eternal primordial fruit's strength remaining. It was still able to help his mortal body transform, but unfortunately, it was just a bit short of breaking through to perfection of the King's Step. Qin Yu opened his eyes. He looked at the fruit core in his hand, feeling the rich vitality it emitted. He carefully took out a jade box and placed it inside before placing it in his storage ring. This thing might be useful in the future. The black-haired old man smiled. All right, your lifespan has been restored. I will continue to reward you. His eyes flashed. Not bad, you've actually formed a 5-element nascent soul and stepped onto the path of the 5 elements. This road is extremely bright, so let me lend you a helping hand. He lifted a hand and a sphere of light appeared. This technique should be the most suitable for you. If you can completely cultivate it and thoroughly master it, it shouldn't be difficult for you to touch upon the source of the world. With a flick of his finger, the sphere of light flew between Qin Yu's eyebrows. In his mind, there was a loud rumble like a million bolts of thunder roaring. The phantom of a towering mountain appeared, and one could faintly see 5 nascent souls sitting cross-legged within it. At this time, they all opened their eyes and cupped their hands together. Greetings, fellow Taoist Qin Yu. After a long time, Qin Yu opened his eyes, his face filled with shock. The 5-element mountain was something that the master of this place had inadvertently killed an almighty being in his early years and obtained his soul to temper. This technique used the 5-element nascent souls as the foundation, and when combined with the rules of the 5 elements, its might could shake the heavens and earth. Although his head was dizzy and he had only seen the beginning, the vastness of the 5-element mountain still left Qin Yu startled. If he could successfully cultivate the 5-element mountain, then he would be able to roll over all divine souls. If he could also perceive an invisible rule technique, then it wouldn't be difficult for him to jump ranks to fight. Of course, this was in a situation where Qin Yu didn't use any other secret techniques that superimposed his combat strength. Indeed, after great danger came great harvests. Disregarding everything else, just this 5-element mountain alone was worth everything he had experienced so far. Many thanks for Senior's generosity. Although this was only a puppet phantom, Qin Yu still cupped his hands together and bowed. Unfortunately, the puppet phantom was ultimately an inanimate object. Its smile didn't change in the least. It only nodded and continued to say, "Your merit in killing the underworld great commander is only enough to obtain these rewards. So, now I will calculate your completion rate for the underworld guard test." The black-clothed old man paused for a moment. He smiled and said, 501, including an underworld great commander. According to the rules, you have passed the test and obtained the qualifications to become an inner court disciple. Please wait a moment. He bowed. This subordinate is the Underworld Guard test officer. I have decided to bestow upon Qin Yu the title of an inner court disciple. I ask my lord to make a decision. Seeing this, Qin Yu's complexion became strange. When Undying attacked, this sort of request had already appeared. Without a doubt, there wouldn't be a response. According to the so-called tacit rules, his qualifications to become an inner court disciple should be set in stone. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. After obtaining the eternal primordial fruit and the 5-element mountain, Qin Yu felt a great deal of anticipation towards obtaining the qualifications to become an inner court disciple. But the script seemed a bit different from what he had imagined. After receiving no response, the black-haired old man waited for a long time. He revealed an awkward expression and continued to say, "My lord, are you dissatisfied with this decision?" But 501 underworld guards only meet the requirements to become an inner court disciple. There was still silence. The black-haired old man let out a deep sigh, his voice filled with helplessness. It's fine. It seems that the junior participating in the test is the descendant of some great figure. Since that is the case, I will make an exception and bestow upon him the status of a true disciple. I ask my lord to make a decision. This was an absolutely unexpected result. Qin Yu's eyes widened. As he looked at the black-haired old man who was putting on a monologue, his complexion became incomparably wonderful. But his heart was filled with ecstasy. The status of a true disciple was far more honorable than that of an inner court disciple, and the advantages one could obtain would be far greater. In fact, Qin Yu couldn't help but feel an even greater anticipation. It had to be known that the master of this island and all of his subordinates had already perished in the endless river of time. The black-haired old man's request was doomed to not obtain a response. According to the logic that the black-haired old man was displaying right now, it was likely that he would obtain harvests that far surpassed his imagination. And indeed, after the black-haired old man made a concession and decided to bestow upon Qin Yu the status of a true disciple, he still didn't obtain a response. This caused his body to shiver. With a solemn expression, he said, "My lord, in the Holy Land, a true disciple stands above all others and is incomparably honored. They have the qualifications to obtain the master's guidance. Are you still not satisfied?" He continued to remain silent. The black-haired old man took a deep breath. He coldly said, "I wonder which family's young man came from that he could actually cause my lord to disregard the rules like this. But the most I can bestow upon him is the status of a true disciple. Since my lord is not satisfied, then I can only report this matter and wait for the Holy Land's decision." He cupped his hands together. "May the inner hall elders decide this matter." There was no response. He cupped his hands together again. "May the 3 hall masters decide this matter." There was no response. The black-haired old man was shocked. He clenched his teeth and cupped his hands together a third time. He bowed deeply and said, "I ask the Vice Lord to make a divine decision." If there was an accompanying image, it should be a few crows cawing as they swaggered off. The black-haired old man couldn't believe it. In such an unreasonable matter, none of the high-level figures of the Holy Land had interfered. Even the Vice-Lord, a supreme existence like him, chose to remain silent. He looked at Chinyu, a complex look in his eyes. Could this junior's status be so terrifying? After a long period of silence, the black-haired old man fell to his knees and respectfully kowtowed. "Master, this old servant needs your order." This completely different action caused Chinyu's heart to skip a beat. It was clear that the master the black-haired old man spoke of was the master of this place. Although there was an extremely high chance that the master of this place had already died, as an existence with unimaginably transcendent strength, who knew whether or not he had left behind some sort of backup plan. Chinyu was nervous to the extreme. His heart raced like a drum. Luckily, nothing had changed. The ruins still maintained their silence. It was fine. Ha 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 ha. Chinyu laughed inwardly. He stared at the black-haired old man. He guessed that he had struck the jackpot this time. Chapter 395. The black-haired old man who thought he understood the truth wiped away a cold sweat that didn't exist. He crawled up from the ground and revealed a brilliant smile. "Little friend Chinyu, I was too negligent before. If I was disrespectful in any way, I ask that little friend not blame me." Chinyu's heart shook. He thought to himself that it was coming. But he revealed a blank expression. "Senior, the black-haired old man revealed a knowing smile. "Little friend, there is no need to explain. I already know what to do." He turned and bowed. In the skies above the arena, countless runes appeared once more. Beneath the cover of these runes, everything that had been destroyed was restored to its original state at an astonishing speed. The black-clothed old man had a dignified expression. He slowly reached out a hand and grasped the void. All the runes erupted with radiant light. This light rapidly gathered together, forming a token. This token was pure black in color. There were patterns carved on the back and two strange runes on the front. A boundless aura spread out from the token, sweeping out in all directions. This aura was inconceivably powerful, as if it could suppress 1,000 mountains and 10,000 rivers. There was also a noble aura to it that left one in awe. The black-haired old man's phantom violently trembled. This action had clearly taken a tremendous toll on him. When the token finally condensed, his figure became even more illusory. "Little friend Chinyu, accept this token and you will be the saint son of my 9-realm holy land. You will be the lord served by trillions of quadrillions of lives and you will have the qualifications to inherit the Holy Land's throne." Chinyu was frightened. Even though he already knew that his harvests would be amazing, he was still frightened by the black-haired old man. The 9-realm Holy Land's highness, the lord served by trillions of quadrillions of lives, the qualifications to inherit the Holy Land's throne, but he soon regained his composure. The master of the 9-realm Holy Land had already perished in the endless river of time and all the powerhouses under him had been exterminated. This so-called highness was likely nothing more than a title. But even if it was only a title, as the Holy Land's highness, shouldn't he obtain more than enough benefits? If he could kill the projection of an underworld great commander and obtain the eternal primordial fruit, the 5-element mountain, and be called highness, then he would naturally obtain more. Shwa, the token flew towards him. Chinyu grabbed it and with a loud bang, the two strange runes on the token appeared in his mind. These two talismans expanded countless times in his mind. Shockingly, they were two mountains that emitted boundless golden light. Chinyu, it was actually his name. Bang, the two runes exploded and countless motes of light rapidly spread outwards. In the end, they turned into countless vast starry skies. A thin and small figure appeared in the starry sky. His back was slightly hunched, but as he stood there, it was as if billions of stars had to crawl before him. I, the Lord of Heaven of the 9 realms, have dominated the heavens for billions of years. If you become my holy son, you will obtain endless good fortune. I hope you will cultivate well so that one day you can transcend and live as long as the sun and the moon. The majestic voice carried with it a boundless majesty that seemed to resound through the entire universe. After saying that, the voice disappeared completely. After an unknown period of time, Qin Yu regained his composure. At some unknown time, he discovered that he was kneeling on the ground, his face filled with reverence and awe. Seeing Qin Yu wake up, the black-haired old man cupped his hands together and said, "This old servant greets your highness." Qin Yu stood up and said, "No need to be so polite. Stand up." The status token had already vanished from sight. With a thought, he could discover that it had fused into his body. But as for where exactly it was, he didn't know. Because it had already recognized him as its master, Qin Yu soon discovered the function of this token. His eyes brightened and he revealed a look of ecstasy. He could roughly summarize the following points. First, by activating the token, with the status of a Holy Land Highness, one could freely enter over 90% of the Holy Land's territory. Second, by holding the token, one had the qualifications to command all members of the Holy Land below the rank of Elder and control 70% of the Guardian puppets. Third, as a Holy Land Highness, in a life or death crisis, one could activate the protective strength within the token, enough to resist the attack of a world-class powerhouse. Fourth, as a Holy Land Highness, one had the qualifications to obtain a massive amount of cultivation resources. They could enjoy special privileges, have many followers, personal guards, and also a vast and boundless fiefdom. Qin Yu was extremely excited. He felt as if the land beneath his feet was now surnamed Qin. He lifted his hand and the token condensed in his palm. With a thought, he was about to activate it. This was because only in an activated state could the token be truly used. Otherwise, it was nothing more than a dead object. There was no reaction. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He tried several more times, but there was no change to the token. "Senior, is my token broken? Why can't it be activated?" The black-haired old man respectfully said, "Your Highness, please call me Blacklake. This token was bestowed upon me by the Master, so it is impossible for it to be damaged. It is only because your cultivation is too low that you cannot meet the requirements to activate it." Qin Yu's face stiffened. He felt as if he were on a roller coaster ride, as if he were at the peak of his life and in the next second he had fallen into the abyss, his life bleak and gloomy. With a bit of hope in his heart, he tried asking, "How much cultivation do I need?" As a result, the response he received left him wanting to curse out loud. This was what Blacklake said. "According to the world your highness comes from, after you reach the Calamity Immortal Realm, you should be able to meet the minimum requirements to activate the token." Seeing Qin Yu's face turn as black as iron, he hesitated for a moment and continued to say, "If you meet the minimum requirements, you can only activate the token for a short period of time. If you wish to completely activate it, your highness must reach the level of touching upon the world." Qin Yu clenched his teeth. He felt as if he had entered a mountain of treasure, but each gem was too large and he couldn't even lift it. Good. If my cultivation is too low and I can't activate the token, then let's forget about that. Then, I should be able to obtain quite a few cultivation resources, right? Blacklake smiled. Of course. Your Highness's identity has been confirmed, so you will naturally be able to obtain the resources you deserve. Your Highness, please wait a moment. Qin Yu's heart relaxed. He quickly comforted himself. It was good that he had cultivation resources. After he refined them, his strength would surely rise several times over. This was a great fortune amidst misfortune. Blacklake lifted a hand, a smug expression on his face. As the highness of my nine-realm holy land, what I envy the most is the Kuanping wings. This treasure is harvested from the northern sea Kuanping. Its wings are used as the base material and countless precious treasures are added as a supplement. After being personally refined by the master, you only need a drop of blood to completely refine it. Normally, the Kuanping wings are kept within your body and can be activated with a single movement. Even an existence that has touched upon the world might not have such speed. Qin Yu's heart shook as he listened. His eyes shined like stars. With the Kuanping wings in hand, what could the South Shine Nation's old ancestor count for? He could even disregard the strongest existences of the Calamity Immortal realm. With a single flap of his wings, who could possibly catch up to him? Seeing Qin Yu's excitement, Blacklake's expression became even more smug. But soon, his smile stiffened and he revealed a look of disbelief. After a long period of silence, he awkwardly said, "Your Highness, the storehouse is temporarily lacking the Kuanping wings. You might have to wait for some time." A basin of cold water was poured over Qin Yu's head. His smile slowly faded, becoming incomparably gloomy. Blacklake hurriedly said, "Your Highness, there is no need to worry. There are definitely Kuanping wings. We will only need you to wait for some time so that we can take the second treasure." He regained some of his composure. Netherworld Spear. Master personally entered the Nine Netherworld and fought with the 9 nether great beasts condensed from the world source. He seized the water of the 9 nether and combined it with extreme cold star iron to forge this spear. Although it is a mass-produced magic tool, the products produced by Master are all top-quality items. With this netherworld spear in hand, even a powerhouse that touched upon the world wouldn't dare to touch its edge. But soon, his smile froze once more. Cough cough, the netherworld spear is currently lacking in storage. But, Your Highness, there are many resources that can be allocated. We don't lack these too. Qin Yu's complexion paled. A foreboding premonition rose in his heart. Could it be that after the 9-realm Holy Land was destroyed, the entire storehouse was empty? Pre-celestial Dao embryo fruit. After swallowing it, one's mortal body can return to the Xiantian realm. One will have a talent comparable to a Xiantian life form and their cultivation will increase by leaps and bounds. Temporarily out of stock. Primal Chaos Indestructible Artifact. A strange treasure born from the primal chaos world. Born from the heavens and earth, it possesses an indestructible attribute. By refining it and fusing it into one's mortal body will become indestructible, out of stock. North Sea Ice Crystal Marrow. Activating the bloodline within the body, out of stock. Sun Moon Star Grass, out of stock. Blacklake's complexion gradually paled. There wasn't a single drop of sweat on him, but he repeatedly wiped his sweat away dozens of times. His voice became increasingly lacking in confidence. Out of stock. Out of stock. All out of stock. Qin Yu had a bitter expression. Indeed, in this world, there was nothing that was perfect. He had obtained the so-called status of His Highness Saint Sun through trickery, but it was impossible for him to obtain these rare and unheard-of treasures. He took a deep breath. As he thought about how he shouldn't have obtained these things to begin with, Qin Yu felt much better and his complexion gradually returned to normal. The resources that the Holy Land Saint Sun was qualified to obtain were all gone. Even though Blacklake was only a puppet projection, his face was filled with embarrassment. He coughed and said, "It seems that there has been an accident in the resource hall. Your Highness should be able to receive it after some time." Qin Yu shook his head, not speaking. He faintly guessed that the resource hall that Blacklake spoke of had likely been looted clean with the destruction of the 9-realm Holy Land. It was naturally impossible for any treasures to be left behind. At this time, Blacklake's eyes flashed. His originally empty eyes seemed to regain a bit of vigor. As the Holy Land's Highness, you have the qualifications to open the secret treasure pagoda and obtain a treasure from within. He lifted a hand and pointed in the void. The phantom of a pagoda appeared, rapidly spinning so that it was impossible to see it clearly. Your Highness, you can shout for it to stop at any time. Whatever you choose will naturally fly out. Qin Yu no longer had any expectations for this. He glanced at it and casually said, "Stop." The pagoda phantom suddenly stopped. Then, a light flew out from within, shooting straight towards Qin Yu. Qin Yu was startled. Then, he revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. He hurriedly reached out and caught it. It was cool to the touch. When the light faded, Qin Yu's complexion turned a bit strange. How should he put it? This thing was soft and grayish-yellow in color. The feeling it gave off was like a lump of frozen snot. Chapter 396. Rest Loam. Black Lake cried out, his face shaking. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. He subconsciously grasped it in his hand and said, "Black Lake, do you know what this is?" Black Lake nodded, envy in his eyes. Your Highness has such amazing luck that you were actually able to choose this Rest Loam. According to what I know, even in the secret treasure pagoda filled with countless treasures, Rest Loam is ranked in the top 3 in value. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. What is the use of Rest Loam? Black Lake said, the name Rest Loam was personally given by my master. In other places, it has other names. For instance, the source of the world, or even heaven-mending divine earth. The origins of this object are extremely mysterious and not even my master was able to investigate it. Its function is simple, with Rest Loam as the foundation, after a long period of time one can condense a complete world. In addition, if the world is severely damaged, fusing with Rest Loam can repair the damage in a short period of time and make it even more solid. Condense a world. Disregarding everything else, just this point alone could be considered a rare treasure. But at this time, what Qin Yu cared more about was its ability to repair worlds. To condense a world, one didn't need to be a genius to know that it had extremely high requirements for one's cultivation. With his mere divine soul level, he could only erupt with the Blue Sea realm, he was far from being able to do so. But because of the little blue lamp, he was now in complete control of a massive space far away in the void. It was just that this space had been severely damaged and it would take a massive amount of time to repair. But with this Rest Loam, the speed at which this space was repaired would be greatly accelerated. The entire space would be restored to vitality in a short period of time. At that time, Qin Yu's ideas about how to use this space would soon be realized. For instance, from the South Shine Nation's treasury, the set of spirit plant seeds that even the South Shine Nation's old ancestor felt distressed. The little blue lamp had turned into a great sun and planted them in the repaired space. Once these spirit plants broke out of their shells and germinated, their growth speed would be something to look forward to. Black Lake seemed to think of something. That's right, the Rest Loam has a special nature. It is strictly forbidden to come into contact with any earth attribute objects. Otherwise, if it is directly fused into it, no one will be able to strip it away. He proudly said, however, my 9-realm Holy Land storehouse has endless treasures. For instance, the primeval ice box. It is made from extremely cold ice that has been sealed for 1,000,000 years without being contaminated by yang energy. It is engraved with laurel runes, and the power of ice cannot scatter even after 10 million years. I brought one for your Highness, and it should be enough to hold the breath soil. He raised his hand and clenched it. His face, which was brimming with confidence, stiffened, revealing astonishment. Finally, it turned into awkwardness. This This immemorial icebox, there was clearly a lot of it before. How come it was suddenly out of stock? Don't worry, we have countless treasures in our storehouse. Even if we don't have the icebox, we can still replace it with other treasures. As he spoke, he reached out a hand again. Chin-Yuk hurriedly interrupted him, there's no need for Black Lake. I'll condense an icebox myself and seal it with talismans to prevent it from melting. It should be enough for now. Black Lake drew back his hand, a look of praise on his face. Your Highness has such an honored status and yet you are so frugal. You can even be called the model of my 9-realm Holy Land. If everyone else were like the Saint's son, I have no idea just how much we would be able to save on our daily expenses. Chin-Yuk galvanized his magic power and condensed an icebox in his palm. Water and ice were connected, so this simple trick wasn't too difficult. He glanced over at Black Lake and sighed inwardly. It seemed that not only was he a puppet projection, but he had even lost his basic memory. It seemed that when the Holy Land was destroyed, he had also suffered tremendous damage. How pitiful. Soon, an icebox was condensed. Chin-Yuk carefully placed the breath soil within and closed the lid. Then, he took out a sealing talisman and activated it with magic power. After making sure that the icebox wouldn't melt for some time, he placed it in his storage ring. At this time, Black Lake suddenly looked up towards the arena entrance. He smiled and said, Your Highness Saint's son, another disciple has come to take the examination. Would you like to receive them so that they can admire your Highness's elegance? Chin-Yuk's complexion changed. Those that came were most likely Titan warriors. If they discovered that he had arrived a step ahead of them, there would surely be some unexpected twists and turns. His thoughts raced. Chin-Yuk said, I have important matters to attend to, so I won't see them. As for news that I have become the Saint's son, don't let anyone know for now. Black Lake smiled. It seems that your Highness wants to cultivate in a low-key manner and then soar into the heavens in a single bound to shock the entire Holy Land. This old servant will wait and see. He smiled and cupped his hands together. Then, this old servant will send your Highness away first. As he spoke, he lifted a finger and space rippled, submerging Chin-Yuk's figure and causing him to vanish from sight. On the other side, in a long corridor, Wuma Sijan and Wenren Dongwe flew out one after the other, dragging a series of afterimages behind them. Their complexions changed. They frowned as they looked at the arena. Black Lake looked at them without expression. Who are you? Why don't you have a token from my 9-realm Holy Land? Wenren Dongwe cupped his hands together. Greetings, Senior. This junior has admired the 9-realm Holy Land for many years. Today, I inadvertently came here in hopes that I can become a member of the Holy Land. I ask that Senior give me a chance. Wuma Sijan's complexion changed. The immortal sect seemed to know a great deal about this land beyond their realms. At the very least, the demonic sect had no idea what the 9-realm Holy Land was. But, his thoughts raced. He respectfully said, This junior is also the same. I ask Senior to help me. Black Lake's complexion relaxed a little. He swept his eyes over the two, his eyes brightening. I never thought that your talents would be quite good. He paused for a moment, a helpless expression on his face. It's just that I have used up too much strength today, so I cannot open the test for you again. Come again next time. Senior. This junior came here through a lucky chance. If I miss today, I fear I won't have another chance. I ask Senior to show mercy. Wenren Dongwe hurriedly said. Black Lake's complexion sank. I already said that the next time you come, there is no need to say anything more. Go. With a flick of his sleeves, space twisted and Wenren Dongwe and Wuma Sijan vanished from sight. In the next moment, the two appeared outside the entrance. The demonic path cultivator that was anxiously waiting here was startled. He hurriedly bowed, "Greetings, demon son." "Out of my way!" Wuma Sijan roared. The demonic path cultivator cried out miserably as he was sent flying backwards. He spat out a mouthful of blood, his face filled with fear. Wenren Dongwe frowned. His complexion darkened and his aura was so cold that it left one trembling. Shwa, shwa, figures appeared one after another from spatial fluctuations. Ningling and the other immortal sect cultivators, the 3 demonic path disciples, as well as Tuba and the other 6 Titan warriors. Now, all of them had blank looks on their faces. When they saw their surroundings, they immediately revealed looks of anger. The female cultivator surnamed Ding hurriedly said, "Senior apprentice brother Wenren, what is going on here?" Wenren Dongwe took a deep breath and bitterly smiled. "There was an accident. I just entered when I was transmitted out." He barely managed to maintain a calm expression, but his heart was filled with unwillingness. This 9-realm Holy Land was originally his greatest lucky chance, but now it had been completely destroyed. As he thought about what the black-haired old man had said about how he had used up too much strength today, Wenren Dongyue's eyes flashed. He faintly guessed what had happened. Wuma Sijan's body tumbled with killing intent. He suddenly punched out his fist. Billowing demonic energy erupted, condensing into many demonic faces that reared their heads back and roared. Wenren Dongyue's lucky chance had been destroyed. His losses were equally astonishing, and perhaps even more serious. After all, the internal strife of the demonic path was far crueler than that of the immortal sect. Although he had a noble status, he was still bound to be implicated in the infinite realm. Damn it! Damn it! As the immortal sect and demonic path cultivators were enraged by the results of this trip, the despair of the Titan warriors far surpassed theirs. Without entering the core region of the Holy Land and obtaining the blessing of the totem, how could their tribe continue to survive? Perhaps they might even be destroyed before the next opening of the Holy Land. "It's all because of you!" Tutu roared out, his eyes filled with madness and despair. "It's all because of you human outsiders that aroused the wrath of the totem, causing us to lose our chance to obtain the blessing." His eyes turned red and the blood energy within his body rumbled out of control. "I will kill you all." The ground cracked open. Tutu shot forwards like a bolt of lightning, hurtling towards a demonic path cultivator. His thick arms reached out, emitting the sound of breaking air. "You are courting death." Wuma Sijan shouted out loud. His figure flashed and he thrust out a palm. Tutu's tall and sturdy body violently trembled and he was sent flying backwards. Massive masses of black demonic energy wrapped around his body, rapidly corroding his flesh and blood and revealing his white bones. Tutu. Tuba's complexion changed. He took off a bone pendant from his waist and placed it on his body, rapidly swallowing up the demonic energy. Across from him, Wuma Sijan was forced backwards, each step leaving a deep footprint in the ground. Blood tumbled in his chest and his complexion darkened. "Tuba, kill them all. Kill them all." The severely wounded Tutu roared out loud. He couldn't help but violently cough. The wounds that he had just managed to stop bleeding reopened once more, causing blood to gush out. Tuba tightly held onto his body, his face dark and gloomy. The Titan warriors beside him all began to breathe heavily. Wenren Dongwe shook his head. "Let's go." He took out a sleeve and flicked it out, opening up a space channel in front of him. He brought Ningling and the others with him and entered. The channel closed behind him. Wuma Sijan sneered. "Let's go." This person took out a black demon bead. This bead exploded on its own, turning into a black lotus. As the lotus bloomed, it revealed that there was another space channel inside. Shwa, the demonic path cultivators entered. The black lotus trembled and vanished from sight. Tuba. Are we just going to watch helplessly as they escape? The hope of our tribe has been ruined by these damned human outsiders. Tutu angrily roared. Tuba clenched his teeth. I certainly know that these human outsiders deserve to die, but if we go all out they will definitely join forces with us. At that time we will all die. I don't fear death, but our tribe has fallen into a life or death crisis. We have to live. Only then will we have a chance to protect our people. Tutu's complexion stiffened. The grief and indignation in his heart increased. His vision darkened and he fainted. Tuba picked him up and coldly said, "Let's return to the tribe." He strode forwards, the 5 Titan warriors following behind him. No one spoke. The atmosphere was filled with sorrow and sorrow. At the entrance to the chessboard of heaven and earth, the immortal and demonic cultivators had already left. As for the remaining 9 Titan warriors, after they learned of what had happened, they all roared out in anger. Soon, a strange fluctuation arrived. The vanished air bubble appeared once more, wrapping around them and sending them rapidly flying into the skies. Deep within the incomparably vast island in the lake, Qin Yu's heart relaxed. He allowed the air bubble to wrap around him and soar into the skies. The moment the air bubble left the island, his thoughts stirred. He looked down at a palace where a massive number of cultivators had gathered. As he saw a slender figure, his eyes widened with excitement. But soon, the air bubble shot into the skies and the island rapidly shrank. That figure finally vanished from his line of sight. #######. I really apologize for renovating the house yesterday. For the fastest and most error-free novel reading, visit Chapter 397. Qin Yu was incomparably anxious. But, he was well aware that this bubble was incomparably firm, it was not something he could shake with his current strength. Qin Yu's eyes widened. It was only when his line of sight was blocked by the fog that he looked away. There was a bit of helplessness and disappointment on his face, but even more relief. Although the 2 of them hadn't met and Ning Ling didn't even know that he had come to the land of divinity and demons, at least she was living a good life. Even if they couldn't meet today, there would still be opportunities in the future. Moreover, once they left the 9-realm Holy Land, they would return to the Infinite Realm without accident. Perhaps they would be able to meet there. Thinking of this, Qin Yu completely calmed down. He closed his eyes and began to meditate. After an unknown period of time, the bubble trembled. Qin Yu opened his eyes and discovered that the bubble he was in had torn open the world barrier once more. He had arrived in the void beyond. The 17 bubbles were very close to each other at this time. He could see through them and see the Titan warriors inside. In one of the bubbles was a giant named Tutu. His body was covered in blood and he was unconscious. It was obvious that his injuries were severe. It seemed that these Titans had also encountered danger after entering the 9-realm Holy Land. At this time, Qin Yu frowned. This was because he discovered that even Tuba and the other Titans were coldly looking at him. Could it be that these giants knew that he had become the holy son of a holy land? But even if they knew this, the Titan race had a deep relationship with the 9-realm Holy Land. Surely they shouldn't have such a reaction, right? Before Qin Yu could think too much about it, the bubbles rapidly sank down and scattered. Although he couldn't see the Titan warrior clearly, his complexion became increasingly gloomy. Something must have happened that he didn't know about. Qin Yu was secretly anxious. They would soon return to the Titan tribe. If they weren't careful, there would be a great problem. His thoughts raced. He suddenly thought back to the many cultivators he saw with Ning Ling when the bubble flew out of the 9-realm Holy Land. The Infinite Realm had opened many times, but there had never been any news regarding the 9-realm Holy Land in the outside world. When the Titans first entered the Holy Land, it didn't seem as if they were facing a great enemy. Could it be that the Immortal Sect and the other cultivators had used some sort of method to forcefully enter the Nine-Realm Holy Land? Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. He was a human outsider. Although he had nothing to do with the Immortal Sect, would these Titans believe him? He was afraid that he was now regarded as the main culprit of this incident. The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Qin Yu was anxious because he was sure that the Titans wouldn't believe his explanation. As he thought back to the terrifying blood energy fluctuations he had felt in the Titan tribe, his complexion became increasingly ugly. The bubble fell faster and faster. After an unknown period of time, the clouds in front of Shiyan suddenly disappeared, and a massive canyon appeared on the ground. Then, he saw the giant tribe inside the canyon, and the black lake deep inside the tribe. The bubble burst on its own. Qin Yu flipped over and landed on the island. Human outsider. Roaring, an enormous fist filled with a terrifying aura rumbled toward him from behind. There was no warning at all. Luckily, Qin Yu was already on guard. He took a step forward and his figure held away, avoiding this brutal strike. Wait! I swear that I have nothing to do with those humans who entered the Holy Land. Otherwise, how could I possibly return here with you? Qin Yu shouted out loud. He looked at Tuba and said, "We've fought before. You should be well aware that my strength is completely different from those people." Tuba frowned, as if he were deep in thought. A Titan warrior roared out, "What nonsense! If you didn't know them, then how could the female cultivators of the Immortal Sect know your name?" As soon as these words were spoken, Tuba's complexion darkened. He took a step forwards and roared, "Give up, resistance, otherwise, die." 16 Titans erupted their blood energy at the same time, causing space to tremble. Countless tiny cracks appeared, covering Qin Yu like a giant net. Qin Yu was stunned for a moment before he bitterly smiled. It seemed that these Titans had already met Ningling. If so, he really wouldn't be able to explain himself. But it was impossible for Qin Yu to allow himself to be captured without a fight. Once he fell into the hands of these furious Titans, he could die at any moment. At this critical moment, a loud shout rang out, "Stop!" This voice was old, but it contained an indescribable strength. Every word seemed to weigh tens of thousands of genes, and as it fell into the ears of those who heard it, they instinctively felt awe. A figure flew over from the tribe. He stepped on the black lake, and every step he took caused tiny ripples to appear. But these ripples caused the entire sacred lake to gently tremble. Shwa, Qin Yu's eyes flashed. From far away, the old Titan had already landed in front of him. He was much smaller than Tuba and the others, only a bit over 10 feet tall. His eyes were warm and bright, each one flowing with something called wisdom. But at this time, the old Titan stared at Qin Yu. His breathing gradually deepened and his eyes brightened with excitement. "Greetings, great priest." Tuba and the other Titans quickly restrained their auras and bowed, their voices filled with absolute respect. The great priest coldly shouted, "You are far too bold. You dare to be so rude to my tribe's honored guest. Hurry up and apologize." Tuba and the others were left dumbfounded. They didn't know what the great priest meant. Their lips moved, but because of their faith in the great priest, they all bowed. "We ask honored guest to forgive us." Qin Yu's thoughts raced, but he maintained his composure. The great priest smiled. "Honored guest is a great and magnanimous person. Please don't lower yourself to the level of juniors." As he spoke to her, he revealed a look of anticipation. "I wonder if honored guest can show us his status token." As he thought, the Titan race had an unusual relationship with the Nine-Realm Holy Land. Qin Yu's heart relaxed. He knew he had passed this hurdle. He lifted his palm and his palm flashed. A token appeared on its own. The great priest's gaze fell on him and he stiffened. His eyes instinctively widened and he cried out, "Saint Sun." After several breaths of time, the great priest fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "The Titan race's 103rd Great Priest greets your Highness Saint Sun. I knew that it was impossible for the Holy Land to abandon us people. They would definitely come to save us." Tuba and the others were frightened. They were only stunned for a moment before they had to bear the great priest's angry roar. "Evil creatures! Hurry up and kneel. This is His Highness Saint Sun of the Holy Land. His status is revered, how can you offend him?" He hesitated for a moment and then said, "Your Highness Saint Sun, these Titan Juniors have offended your dignity. According to the rules, they should be immediately executed and their souls thoroughly erased. If your Highness agrees, then this old servant will personally kill them." At this time, no one believed that the great priest had gone insane. Feeling the terrifying blood energy fluctuations coming from the great priest's old body, Tuba and the others paled. They could no longer maintain their bodies and fell to their knees. "Great priest, please spare us." The great priest's eyes twitched but he didn't even glance at them. "I ask your Highness Saint Sun to give the order." It seemed that as long as Chin Yu nodded, he would kill Tuba and the others without hesitation. The Titan that attacked Chin Yu was pale and his body shivered. Chin Yu never thought that the status of the Nine-Realm Holy Land Saint's son would have such a great deterrent effect. Although the great priest appeared respectful and subservient, he was well aware just what sort of terrifying strength was hidden within his seemingly old body. The Nine-Realm Holy Land had already been destroyed and all that was left of his status as the Saint's son was a title. If he really didn't forgive him, who knew whether or not this old fellow would turn hostile? Moreover, he hadn't suffered any losses at all. All of these thoughts flashed past Chin Yu's mind. He put away the token and lightly said, "The ignorant are not guilty. Forgive them." The great priest relaxed. He turned and shouted, "Did you hear that? Hurry up and thank His Highness Saint Sun for showing mercy." Tuba and the other Titans didn't dare to say anything else. They kowtowed, "Thank you, Your Highness Saint Sun." Although they still didn't know how this human outsider in front of them had become the Saint's son in the blink of an eye. As for this so-called Saint's son, just what was he? At this time, there was a pitiful cry. After the bubble burst, Tuba, who had been placed on the ground, opened his eyes and roared in pain. On the surface of his body, the barely healed wounds began to split open. His flesh and blood began to turn black and rot, emitting a thick stench. "This is bad. Tuta's injuries have erupted. Great priest, please save him," Tuba anxiously said. The great priest's figure moved and then he came to a sudden stop. He looked over. Chin Yu waved his hand. Then, his figure flashed and he arrived at Tuta's side, placing a hand on his body. This speed left Chin Yu startled. If the great priest had any ill intentions, there would have been no way for him to dodge. Bang! A powerful aura fluctuated, turning into a blood-red light that covered Tuta's body. Soon, the great priest opened his eyes, revealing a gloomy expression. What a terrifying corrosive demonic power. Whether or not he can survive will depend on Tuta's luck. He stepped forwards and the ground split open, leading deep into the island. Then, there was the sound of trickling water and a pool of clear water rose up from the depths of the island. Chin Yu's eyes brightened. This was because he discovered that the strength emitted by this spring water was the cooling aura that had healed his wounds after he passed the test of the sacred lake. Although his demon body had reached large success, if he could absorb this spring water he would definitely be able to take another step further. In particular, what surprised Chin Yu was that there was actually a lotus root growing in this clear spring water. Moreover, this lotus root had clearly just sprouted. As soon as Qin Yu saw it, he couldn't help but feel a strong sense of hunger. It made him want to directly eat this lotus root. Qin Yu's intuition told him that the spring water had the ability to strengthen the mortal body, and this lotus root was the key. The great priest lifted a hand and the spring water flew out, wrapping around Tutu. The horrifying wounds on his body rapidly healed and his flesh and blood began to regenerate. But the great priest didn't relax at all. Rather, his expression became increasingly dignified. "Ah!" Tutu roared out in pain. His healing wounds began to rapidly rupture and deteriorate even faster. In the blink of an eye, large tracts of his body began to rot away. The spring water that wrapped around him turned black and emitted a pungent stench. The great priest's complexion was heavy. The corrosive demonic power in Tutu's body is terrifying. Unless it is instantly expelled, any method of treatment will be swallowed up by it and become even more terrifying. Tuba anxiously said, "Great priest, is there no hope?" The great priest hesitated for a moment. If he directly swallows the divine lotus, he might be able to save Tutu's life. But the divine lotus is a holy object of my Titan race and concerns the fate of our entire tribe. I cannot let him use it. The surrounding Titans fell silent, sorrow on their faces. Although they competed with each other and sometimes fought with each other, they had grown up together and had an extremely close relationship. But now, they had to watch helplessly as Tutu died. This feeling could be imagined. The great priest took a deep breath, a trace of sorrow in his eyes. He turned and forced a smile. "Birth, aging, sickness, and death, this is the cycle of the heavens and earth. I have shown your highness a joke. I will bring your highness away." Tuba's eyes flashed. He suddenly fell to his knees. "Saint Sun, can you save Tuba? I beg you," the great priest roared out. "Tuba, you are too insolent." Walala, the surrounding Titans all fell to their knees. "We beg your highness Saint Sun to help us. We will be eternally grateful." The great priest's fingers trembled. "How dare you?" It had been difficult for him to protect these juniors. If they angered Qin Yu, the consequences could be imagined. But as he thought about how they were pleading for the lives of their brothers and sisters, he was both angry and anxious. Chapter 398. As he spoke, Qin Yu's palm flashed with light. He took out a jade box and opened it to reveal a fruit core. An astonishing life force emitted from it. Just taking a deep breath was enough to raise one's spirits. Eternal primordial fruit. The great priest cried out, excitement in his eyes. "I never thought that your highness would have such a precious treasure. Tutu can be saved." He took a deep breath and solemnly said, "I ask your highness to rest assured that this old servant will only take a wisp of origin energy from the fruit core. It will not cause any damage to it." Qin Yu nodded. "All right." Tuba and the others looked at him with surprise and anticipation. The great priest received the jade box with both hands and carefully looked at the fruit core. A look of praise appeared in his eyes. He lifted a finger and a pearl-sized sphere of blood condensed at his fingertip. A wisp of white and green light flew out from the fruit core and fused into the sphere of blood. The great priest hastily flicked his finger and a bead of blood flew into Tutu's body. Tutu's body suddenly trembled and large amounts of rotten flesh fell off. Black blood flowed out and he let out a blood-curdling scream before directly fainting. The great priest stepped forwards. The ground wriggled like a living creature, burying away all the corrosive and poisonous blood. On the surface of Tutu's body, his flesh and blood wriggled and rapidly regenerated. Soon, he was restored to his original state. With a look of relief on his face, he fell into a deep sleep. The great priest let out a long breath of relief. He smiled. All right, bring Tutu away. He will recover after resting for some time. Tuba respectfully bowed to Chinyu, his face full of gratitude. Then, he picked up Tutu and led the Titans away. Your Highness Saint's son, Tutu has repeatedly disrespected you and yet you are willing to use a treasure to save him. This is truly generous and benevolent of you. After he wakes up, I will have him kowtow in apology. The great priest returned the jade box with both hands. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. There is no need to apologize. I would like to know, did the method of drawing out the fruit core's origin energy cause any damage to the great priest? The great priest was stunned. He probingly asked, Your Highness Saint's son wants to take the origin energy from the fruit core. Qin Yu nodded, not denying it. The great priest earnestly said, Your Highness, please forgive me for being rude. Taking away the origin energy from the fruit core might be able to increase one's strength, but this method is not advisable. He lifted a hand and pointed. Your Highness, please look at this clear pond. With Your Highness's eyesight, you should be able to discover that the reason why the spring water can repair and strengthen the body is because of this divine smelting plant. As for this divine lotus, it was created by the Holy Land a long time ago. The high priest of our tribe received a reward for meritorious service and obtained a lotus seed from a lotus throne. Because of the lack of spiritual energy and the lack of proper care, this divine lotus grows extremely slowly. But just as it sprouts, this spring water has such a miraculous effect. It is the most precious inherited treasure of my Titan tribe. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Great priest, are you saying that the fruit core in my hand can also be cultivated? The high priest bowed. I can't guarantee that I will succeed, but if I succeed, the benefits I will obtain will far surpass the benefits of directly absorbing the core's origin energy. This old servant dares to make a suggestion. As for how to do it, it is up to Your Highness to decide. If you still want to extract the vitality from the core, it is not difficult for this old servant. Qin Yu said, Thank you for the reminder, great priest. Since the fruit core can be cultivated, I will naturally try it. It was no wonder that when he saved Tutu, the great priest had solemnly stated that he wouldn't damage the fruit core. The Titan tribe couldn't cultivate the divine lotus, but with the little blue lamp, he had some confidence he could. As he thought about the possibility of harvesting a fruit tree with eternal primordial fruits hanging from it in the future, he couldn't help but feel excited. He closed the jade box and placed it in his storage ring. Then, his eyes fell onto the spring water. The great priest observed his expression. He respectfully said, Your Highness Saint's son has an honored status and is also magnanimous enough to forgive my tribe's juniors. The Titan tribe has no way to repay you, but perhaps this spring water might be of some use to Your Highness Saint's son. Your Highness, please feel free to use it. Qin Yu was overjoyed. Thank you, great priest, then I won't be polite. But, please rest assured that I will not touch the divine lotus in the spring water. The great priest relaxed. What he feared was that Qin Yu wouldn't be willing to use the fruit core and would instead have thoughts of the Titan tribe's divine lotus. Now that his worries were gone, his smile became even brighter. Then, this old servant will no longer disturb Your Highness' cultivation. I will bid my farewells first. If there is anything Your Highness needs, please call for me. This old servant will be ready at any time. He turned and flew towards the Black Lake, bringing Tuba and the others who were waiting on the shore back to the tribe. Qin Yu looked at the spring water on the ground and smiled. His status as the Nine-Realm Holy Land Saint's son had helped him a great deal. He hoped that this spring water would be able to help his mortal body take another step forward and reach perfection of the King's Step demon body. If he could awaken his demon body combat skills once more, his strength would rise dramatically. With a step, Qin Yu fell into the spring water. Countless wisps of cool energy rushed into his body. He quickly closed his eyes and absorbed them. Thump, thump within his chest, his heart fiercely beat. Blood rushed through his blood vessels, emitting excited cheers. Yu could clearly feel his mortal body constantly strengthening. Although it couldn't compare to the effects of the eternal primordial fruit, it was still extremely amazing. For 3 days, Yu stayed in the spring water. Because of his cultivation, the water level had dropped by several feet compared to before. It had to be known that even Tuba, Tutu, and the other Titans' younger generation geniuses could only obtain an extremely limited amount of spring water. If this were exchanged for spirit stones, then Yu would have spent at least several tens of millions of spirit stones in these 3 days of cultivation, or even more. Shwa, Yu opened his eyes. A divine light flashed and the bones in his body began to emit explosive crackling sounds. The momentum was astonishing. His figure flashed and he landed on the ground. His blood energy revolved around him, absorbing all the water vapor. His black robes became dry. I was just a bit off. Yu had a happy expression on his face, but there was also a bit of regret. The spring water had allowed his mortal body to reach the peak of large success of the King's Step, just a fine line away from perfection. But this fine line was like an insurmountable ravine. Unless he ate up the divine lotus, it would be impossible to break through. Yu had promised the great priest that he wouldn't use the divine lotus, so he naturally couldn't go back on his word. Moreover, there were still many things he didn't understand about the great priest's actions. This wasn't the first time that the Titans had entered the Nine-Realm Holy Land. They should be well aware of its true situation. To put it in simpler terms, such a powerful Titan great priest didn't need to care about Yu's status as the Saint Son at all. But why was he so respectful and submissive? Before figuring out all of this, Yu felt that he should maintain a bit of vigilance and caution. His thoughts raced. A moment later, Yu looked up and loudly said, "Great priest, I have finished cultivating." Just as his voice fell, a black shadow appeared at the end of the lake. In several breaths of time, it landed in front of him. The great priest smiled. He respectfully said, "Congratulations to your Highness Saint Son for making great progress in your cultivation." He swept his eyes over the spring water. Seeing that the divine lotus was intact, he relaxed. In order to avoid angering Yu, he hadn't dared to sense the situation on the island at the center of the lake. In truth, he was worried about the safety of the divine lotus. The great priest was well aware of just how tempting the divine lotus was to someone who cultivated the mortal body. If Yu really ate it, the tribe's situation would become even worse. Yu realized this but didn't reveal it. "I must thank your tribe's divine lotus and great priest for your generosity." The great priest flicked his sleeves and the spring water rapidly sank into the ground. The ground closed up with it. "Your Highness Saint Son, the tribe has prepared a banquet to welcome your arrival. I hope that you can attend." Yu thought for a moment. "If great priest is so sincere, then I must disturb you. This is the honor of my Titan tribe." The great priest was overjoyed. He brought Yu and flew out of the Black Lake. Soon, after Yu cleaned himself up, a grand banquet began. Yu was respectfully invited to the seat of honor where he was greeted by the tens of thousands of Titan tribe members. They all looked at him with awe and curiosity. Just as the banquet began, a pale-faced Tutu arrived with several Titans. He knelt to the ground. "My son Tutu didn't know your Highness Saint Son's status and offended your Highness' dignity. Thanks to your Highness' magnanimity, he was able to preserve his life. Today, I brought him here to apologize to your Highness and express my thanks." It was unknown what Tutu had said, but he changed from his usual arrogant and cruel demeanor. He respectfully kowtowed. "Tutu thanks your Highness Saint Son for saving my life. In the future, I am willing to follow your highness and be your sword and spear, helping you overcome all obstacles. Qin Yu smiled. What happened in the past is already in the past. I don't blame you. It's just that it is inconvenient for me to bring you along when I am traveling in the outside world. The great priest stood up. He respectfully said, Your Highness Saint's son, although you have an honored status, the humans in the outside world don't know of it. How about you bring Tuba and Tutu with you and have them follow by your side? Moreover, with your status, it is natural for you to have some guards. Qin Yu frowned. According to what I know, the life forms of the infinite realm are unable to leave as they please. The great priest waved his hand. Tutu and the others kowtowed once more. Then, they drew back several steps and turned to leave. The titans to the left and right also drew back, leaving room for the two to speak. Your Highness Saint's son, you might not know, but your status token itself has an enormous space and can even carry life forms. Of course, the ones you can carry must be cultivators of the nine-realm Holy Land and their subordinates. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Then, he revealed a helpless look. Unfortunately, with my current cultivation, I cannot activate the token, so how can I bring them away? The great priest bowed. I don't dare to conceal anything from your highness. Tuba and Tutu are the most outstanding juniors of my Titan race. I have my own selfish reasons for sending them away. If our tribe cannot be protected in the future, with the two of them outside, the bloodline of my Titan race can still be passed on. So, I will think of a way to help your highness open up a portion of the space ahead of time so that the two of them can enter. Of course, my methods are limited and I can only do this much. Truly activating the token will depend on your highness yourself. Qin Yu smiled. Since that's the case, I naturally have no objections. The great priest was overjoyed. Thank you, your highness. Qin Yu took out the token and handed it to the great priest. This came from the master of the nine-realm Holy Land and its might was unfathomable. Now that it had recognized him as its master, he could take it back with a thought, so he didn't need to worry about any accidents occurring. As the banquet was about to end, Qin Yu looked up at the skies. He casually said, Great priest, ever since I entered the infinite realm, I have never seen darkness appear here. May I know the reason for this? The great priest cupped his hands together. I have never left the infinite realm, so I don't know what the outside world is like. But, from ancient times until now, the infinite realm has always been in a state of daytime. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that it was like this when the world was complete? The great priest nodded. My tribe has suffered many disasters, but our inheritances have never been severed. According to the ancient texts of my tribe, this is indeed the case. Qin Yu said, I wonder if I can look through your tribe's ancient texts. The great priest smiled. Of course. After the banquet ends, I will have someone deliver them to your highness. 2 hours later, Qin Yu sat on a stone chair in his dwelling, carefully reading through the Titan race's inheritance stones. These objects were quite mystical, they could record a great deal of information and even preserve images. Among the many inheritance stones, Qin Yu was able to see the magnificence of the infinite realm when it was complete. Compared to the current land of divinity and demons, it wasn't any worse. And among these inheritance stones, there was one that belonged to a great priest from hundreds of thousands of years ago. It was an object that he used to record his daily life. Qin Yu flipped through it and finally came to a conclusion. In the infinite realm, the concept of night didn't exist. This was the so-called eternal wisdom. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.